Members, please be upstanding for the chairman.
Continuing after lunch, we've got to item 15, notice of motions. So we will take motion 1, and I call upon Councillor Tom Hollis to move motion 1.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the classic after lunch spot where everybody's a little bit tired. But no, yeah, you're very well said. But the Nottinghamshire County Council welcomes the announcement that smart motorways will be removed from the government road building plans. It has been stated this is due to lack of public confidence felt by drivers. This council notes that there have been at least 79 deaths linked to smart motorway. There have also been hundreds of accidents causing injury and distress connected with smart motorways. This council further notes that around 10% of England's motorway network is made up of smart motorways, and that large parts of the M1 going through Nottinghamshire form a smart motorway. This council believes that residents' lives are being put in danger on these roads of death. This council therefore calls for the government to undertake an urgent review of existing smart motorways and calls for immediate government investment to ensure that motorists' lives are not put in danger in Nottinghamshire and across the UK. This council resolves to write to the Secretary of State for Transport, making this council's opposition to smart motorways clear. So, firstly, Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing the Independent Alliance to move this motion today on scrapping smart motorways and providing real investment to make our motorways safer. News announced by the government on the 15th of April last month that any new smart motorways are being removed from government road building plans due to a lack of confidence felt by drivers is to be welcomed. For context, Mr. Chairman, a smart motorway is a section of motorway that uses traffic management methods to increase capacity and reduce congestion in particularly busy areas. These methods include using the hard shoulder as a running lane and using variable speed limits to control the traffic flow. Highways England developed smart motorways to manage traffic in a way that minimises environmental impact, cost and time to construct by avoiding the need to build additional lanes. In short, they have been previously constructed on the cheap to increase capacity of our motorways. In Nottinghamshire, as the motion states, around 10% of England's motorway network is made up of smart motorways, and large parts of the M1 going through Nottinghamshire form a smart motorway. Now everybody knows that in Nottinghamshire, identified transport infrastructure spend per head has been the lowest in the country, the East Midlands, for generations. The investment in smart motorways across Nottinghamshire forms part of this low spend. Simply putting it, we've been used as guinea pigs for the smart motorways, and the fact that government have announced that they will pause indefinitely any new smart motorways because of concerns about safety leaves residents in Nottinghamshire in peril. The motion before you today is very explicit. It uses the words roads of death. The government have wielded the axe after campaigners blamed the traffic schemes for up to 79 deaths. It could be the tip of the iceberg, says road safety campaigners. We welcome the move to pause 12 planned stretches of smart motorway, but this motion calls for the government to go further. We believe that we should be extending the ban on all existing smart motorways. The climb down from the government comes after repeated refusals to stop expanding the network, even as fatalities continue. Claire Mercer's husband, Jason, died on the M1 in 2019 after new measures were implemented. Jason was involved in a minor accident and was swapping insurance details when a lorry hit Jason and fellow motorist Alexandru Mugarino. Coroner David Upperth blamed their deaths on the smart motorway system. Claire Mercer has welcomed the news that any new smart motorways will be axed. She is quite rightly dismayed to see the existing smart motorways would remain in operation. A hard shoulder on every single motorway, that is the only thing I'll accept, she said. If they're saying the concerns are safety, how can they say the existing ones are okay to carry on? Smart motorways have no hard shoulder and rely on technology to detect broken down vehicles and close affected lanes. This is technology that doesn't always work. It was only recently that another man's death following a crash was blamed on a smart motorway. It might have been avoided if the hard shoulder was active, a coroner said. David Levitt, 53, sustained chest and head injuries after a stationary car was hit on the M1 near Daventry, Northamptonshire in 2018. The coroner warned of a risk of future deaths because the smart motorway had all lanes open to traffic. It was only a few weeks ago another coroner ruled that a crash on the same stretch of the M1 that killed Derek Jessops, 83, and Charles Scripps, 78, would not have happened if there'd been a hard shoulder. Jake Gallatry, 35, from Wolverhampton, was seriously injured in an accident on Smart Motorway section near the M6 near Manchester in April 2021. He said smart motorways are lethal, and when a hard shoulder is present, you have a constant lifeline given danger isn't considerate in time and it chooses to strike. If you've missed a refuge area, then trouble occurs. You'll find yourself too far from the next one to make it. These roads will never be safe, given we've all seen the scandals and word gymnastics that our leaders love to use. Shadow of doubt that the government should abolish this failed experiment. Enough of them admit that they're failing roads. Mr. Gallatry is quite correct. He states that the government are using word gymnastics to explain the pausing of future projects. What he means is that the government are saying they're scrapping future schemes because drivers don't feel confident to use smart motorways. They don't blame the deaths and injuries or the advice of the coroners. These are just examples, Mr. Chairman, and campaigners are very clear. Forcing the government to pause the rollout of smart motorways is only half the battle. The other part of the battle is to scrap the existing smart motorways across the country and provide investments to make them safe. That is what this motion is calling for. The government say that during the pause, they have committed 900 million for safety improvements across the network, including building more emergency areas. This has to be an admission of guilt. Indeed, the blood of 79 deaths must be on the hands of Conservative government. It is not as if they were not warned. In April 2021, Transport Select Committee, in a report, the rollout and safety of smart motorways, MPs warned the government that safety risks on all lane running smart motorways should have been addressed by the government and national highways before the motorway scheme were rolled out. Safety improvements to all lane running motorways should have been delivered in a timely fashion. Instead, promises to prioritise improvements were broken. A YouGov poll in 2021 showed strong opposition to controversial all-lane running smart motorways. Of those surveyed, 59% opposed the use of all-lane smart running motorways, while 25% supported them and 18% had no opinion. Yet the government refused to listen. It's taken death after death, coroner's report after coroner's report, and injury after injury for the government to finally act, but where does that leave our existing smart motorways? Passing this motion this afternoon will send a clear message to the government that we believe that the lives are being put in danger. This is not about party politics. This is about using our collective voice when there is clear evidence that residents' lives are being put in danger. That's why we need investment now to scrapping existing smart motorways in this country.
You've got 30 seconds, Councillor
Thank
Hollis.
For Jason, Alexandru, Derek, for Charles, and the other 75 that have been killed on our death trap roads, we need to finish the job and scrap these death trap roads now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. I call upon Councillor Shaw to second the motion.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll speak on this motion. Thank you. Pleased to be seconding this important motion. I've had concerns about smart motorways for years. As a cautious driver, I use the motorway quite a lot, and believe me, it can be quite scary. Councillor Hollis has raised a number of tragedies that could be avoided with better stock vehicle detection systems, plus the more frequent refuge areas. However, a barrage of negative publicity led the government to pause the rollout of smart motorways in 2022 until 5 years of safety data could be collected. Now, less than 18 months later, all plans to expand the network are being scrapped. Where does that leave us, Mr. Chairman? The logical conclusion is to scrap the existing ones, but they have said they will look to invest in more refuges and better technology. The only problem with that, how are they going to actually invest in technology if they've already got the stanchions over the motorway? Without closing the motorway down, you're going to have more electronic signalling. What you could have done is actually highlighted the road on the approaches to these refuges in colour on the ground and making sure that that left-hand lane is kept clear. However, my issue with it leaves drivers in peril now with additional refuges being installed. Where, when and how many? Instead, the government tried to face and insist our current motorways, including Nottinghamshire ones, are safe. Palpably they're not, with death traps and motion states roads of death. And the term motion roads of death has actually come from a BBC reporter, Richard Bilton. Existing smart motorways, this leads us back to the emergency refuge areas. The consensus is that we need more of them so fewer people are forced to stop in lane. However, you are more likely to be safer while stationary, but getting back onto the motorway in the refuge area is more dangerous because you haven't got the runoff. You've got a small attach, a small approach and a small off, and it's very, very dangerous. And it can be difficult to rejoin the motorway, especially at peak times, if you have been unfortunate enough to actually pull into one of these areas. Acts in the future of smart motorways is a watershed announcement, but shall be a victory for everybody. Research has shown that all lane running smart motorways are deeply unpopular with drivers, as my councillor colleague said. We're pleased that the government has finally realised that the same conclusion. It's vitally important that the plans are made to make hundreds of existing miles of these motorways as safe as possible. The government says that they'd rather be reviewing existing smart motorways and invest in them. I believe that on evidence-based, but now is the time to start scrapping the motorways. Richard Bilton, who I've referred to, Panorama, looked at smart motorways. And in 2020, he said that Britain's killer motorways. Britain's Panorama, BBC's Panorama found that there have been 20 more times near misses on the M25 since the introduction of these smart motorways. It can take up to 17 minutes for Highways Authority to notice that you've broken down. So if you're in the right-hand lane, you're in the second lane, or you're in the third lane, you could be there for 17 minutes of live traffic. To display a red cross in the lane above to indicate that other road users not to use that lane. During that time, cars and trucks still approaching you at 70 plus miles an hour and sometimes over that speed limit. If a car or a truck was to hit you at this point from the rear, deaths and injuries would be certain. Smart motorways are a clear and pleasant danger. So council, please, this sensible motion, have a look at it and consider. And cement our opposition to Nottingham's roads of death. I'm urging members to vote for this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Short. Are there any members wishing to speak? Councillor Fowle.
We have an amendment.
Okay. Pause to hand it out. Just pause to hand the amendment out. So, have you got copies of the amendment?
Yes, we've got them.
Yeah. So we've got the copies. They'll be coming round to you, members. Everybody got a copy of the amendment? Yeah. Councillor Gallant. Yeah. So I call upon Councillor Gallant to put the amendment. Councillor Gallant.
Thanks very much. So it's a fairly straightforward amendment. We're noting that the government are still planning to spend £900 million on these smart motorways, which is effectively throwing good money after bad. We also note that the leader of the council has said we need £200 million to fix Nottinghamshire roads. So we'd like to add to this motion that we call upon the government to stop this spending on the smart motorways and divert it to local roads to allow us to improve our local roads and get people onto safe motorways.
Thank you, Councillor Garland. I think Councillor Walsh is seconding this amendment. Councillor Welsh.
Yeah, sorry, I was just deciding whether I was going to speak or not. Sorry.
She's going to speak.
Yeah, I second this motion. Smart motorways are not particularly smart, are they? They're fundamentally very dangerous. Jason Mercer died in 2019 while driving to work on a shunter of a stretch of the M1, actually near Nottinghamshire, which had been converted to a smart motorway. It seems the government have got themselves in a complete mess with regards to smart motorways, particularly because they're national highways, which is a government owned company, Arm Stretch company, is still advocating how safe they are, while the Prime Minister is telling us that they aren't very safe and we're going to stop them. So perhaps they need to sort out what their national highways are saying with regards to these smart motorways, because it's not in kilter with the government that actually owns them, and frankly quite embarrassing for the government. As it says on here, our roads were utterly appalling, and actually I went to go and collect my coach tickets because I'm going to Wembley on Saturday to see Notts County win promotion, and as I was going, the amount of potholes around there and the flooding that was involved from that short rainfall, quite frankly, is utterly appalling. Not to mention the pavements and roads. My son has recently started school at the local school, and he rides his bike to school in the mornings, and on foot, the pavements and everything's just a mess. There's holes, everything everywhere. We need investment in our local roads, and while we try and fight for that local investment, that's clearly there's a situation with regards to smart motorways. And I'll just finish by saying The government statement with regards to smart motorways said if they'd continued building the existing roads, it would have cost £1 billion to do it. It's £1 billion earmarked in this government's budget for smart motorways that is no longer required. 900 million to so-called carry on with those three other smart motorways, which includes M6 Junction 6 to Junction 8 and M6 to Junction 18 to 26, which the government says, well, we've got to finish it doing it because we're 3/4 of the way through now. Heaven forbid someone dies on that smart motorway because the government can't halt what it is doing. There's a lot of money in this government at times for things like smart motorways. 1 billion here, 900 million here, while the people of Nottinghamshire are driving on roads which are quite frankly unsafe. And let's not forget, even Jeremy Vine was talking about it. Nottinghamshire absolutely ridiculed the other day on national media about the hole in Worksop. It's embarrassing. It's utterly embarrassing.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Hollis, will you accept the amendment, or would you like to consider an adjournment? Yeah, 10 minutes. Yeah. So we're having an adjournment for 10 minutes, members. So, members, Councillor Hollis has accepted the amendment, so we're now accepting speakers on the altered motion. Are there any speakers on the altered motion? We've got one speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Look, I fully recognise the importance of these safety issues. I totally agree with people's concerns on smart motorways. Lots of people have campaigned on this issue for many years with concerns about those motorways that have no hard shoulder. It's right to say there are examples of problems, accidents, sadly deaths that have occurred on those roads that could be attributed in part to the nature of the road not having a hard shoulder. 100% accept that. I agree with much of it. It's not a subject personally I've been involved in directly. I recognise those concerns and risks. I'd like to think, therefore, although some of the language in the initial speech might not reflect this, I'd like to think that this was raised for the right reasons and with the right kind of emotion behind it. I have to gently say, though, that it's a month or more too late, and we're being asked to write a letter to government to ask them to do something they previously announced a month ago, that Councillor Hollis even referred to in his opening speech. I'll start with the initial motion, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and come on to the amendments and the altered motion as it now stands. But in early April, the government's announced a halt to the Smart Motorways programme, as has been explained already, cancelled all future projects, and there is a £900 million scheme which is not aimed at continuing the existing motorways. It is aimed at introducing safe stopping areas and further technology on existing smart motorways to improve road safety. So government has both stopped the rollout of all future smart motorways and has committed £900 million to making existing smart motorways safer. Writing to government to ask them for a review of smart motorways, I think, has been clearly answered already in those government decisions. The Prime Minister actually pledged to act a smart motorway rollout as part of his campaign for leadership of the Conservative Party, and he's now delivered on that. He says all drivers deserve to have confidence in the roads that they use. Many people around the country driving to get to work, take their children to school, go about their daily lives. He wants them to be able to do so with confidence in our motorway network. Well, of course, I'm delighted to report to you that he has indeed made those changes. He's announced the end of smart motorways, and writing to ask them to review that is after the fact. I couldn't therefore have supported the original motion. I'll come on to the amended one. It's slightly ironic for Labour to make amendments to it because smart motorways were, of course, introduced by Ruth Kelly in 2006 under a Labour government. They were previously called managed motorways, introduced in, I think, about 2002-03, also by a Labour government. And it is actually this Conservative government that is now taking steps to rectify those safety challenges after collecting that safety data and understanding the risks. The amended motion misunderstands the funding. It says both spend billions of pounds to immediately reinstate hard shoulders on smart motorways and then do a review to see whether that is the right thing to do or not. From a safety perspective, that seems backwards to me, I have to say. It also then says take all the money away that has been allocated to those road safety improvements and put it somewhere else. So what are you spending to reintroduce those smart, reinstalling, it does say that, reinstalling, can I finish, Michelle? Reinstalling safe stopping on those motorways will run to a cost significantly more than £900 million. It will run into the billions and billions of pounds. And what you're asking is to do that before we've even done a review to decide whether that's the right thing, recognising there's already a review as to what safety measures, funded review as to what safety measures could be introduced to support those motorways as it stands. Second, it then says take away the money that has been allocated to that work and spend it on roads. Now, I have been the first to say we need more funding for roads. I am the first to say it on a regular basis. I've said it here. I've said it nationally. We will get more funding through the combined authority work that we can spend on transport infrastructure. I press government all the time for more money from roads, but it's nonsensical to say do billions of pounds of work on smart motorways because we're concerned about the safety, but take the funding away and spend it on something else. That's what this amended motion now says. So I'm afraid it doesn't make sense. With that in mind, Chairman, I can't knowingly ask my group to write a letter that frankly will make us look a bit daft now. Initially, it would have made us look like we're not paying attention. And although I understand the safety concerns and totally agree with them, we've made these decisions already. It would have made us look like we weren't really paying attention. Now, it makes us look like we don't understand how money works. And we want to spend lots of money without actually checking first whether it would make any difference. I trust that those families who've been impacted by this, members of the public who've been affected by safety issues on the roads, will be approving of the fact that government has taken these steps, has taken these measures to scrap the Smart Motorways programme introduced by the Labour government and to spend money on restoring safety measures on the existing motorways. But I'm afraid this motion now, as amended, doesn't make sense, and it's not something that my group or the administration can vote for.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. So I call upon Councillor Creamer.
Thank you, Chairman, and congratulations to both of you on your new positions. Yeah, on smart motorways, the issue seems to me, in the main, is actually safety. They have been found to be unsafe. They have been agreed to be unsafe. And Brent's quite on about the money for improvements. So we're not asking for improvements. We're asking them to be removed. If that money was specifically allocated to remove it, which it is not, they have not made a specific commitment to remove them. They've made a specific commitment not to create any more. But we've got an unsafe system, which is what they're tinkering with. Now, if they had turned around and said, put that 900 million to removing them, we wouldn't even have to put an amendment in. We wouldn't ask for that money to go elsewhere because safety is the most important thing. So while you're actually arguing about this money, we don't argue about the money per se, but they are wasting it. And that is the argument. They are wasting money on improving these things. We want a positive commitment from the Secretary. You know, you've agreed they're unsafe, health and safety wise, the people who actually administer them, the timing it takes to spot that somebody's broken down, the accidents and fatalities that's already happened. We want a commitment to get rid of them. We don't want a commitment to improve what we've got and just have the safety issue pushed aside a little bit. We've made them a little bit safe. We've got 40 deaths a year now. This is top of my head, so don't quote me on this. 40 deaths a year. We'll have 20 deaths a year. One is too many. Commit to get rid of them. And it's not too late to write to the Secretary when they've started something. We're saying things can be improved, and it can be improved by getting rid of them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. I call upon Councillor Henshaw.
Thank you, Chair. I to support the amendment in relation to additional safety measures for smart motorways. Would council agree with me that writing to government is a worthwhile and good way of bringing matters that of importance to the notice of government? Does the leader of the council agree that writing letters to government is a good way of highlighting problems? No. Well, I presume it's okay when you write a letter to him, then asking about he better pull his finger out in relation to the levelling up agenda, or else there's going to be a lot of Tory MPs lose their seats. So in that instance, it's a good way of getting things to the attention of the government. But when we try to put something forward in relation to making roads more safe, then it's not a good idea, and we shouldn't do it.
Are you speaking to the motion, Councillor Henshaw?
I'm speaking to the amendment, Chair, and I will get round to the amendment. Yes, I've mentioned.
Do that, Councillor Henshaw.
Thank you for pointing me in the direction, Chair. In relation to the amendment, yeah, I mean, the Labour Group's meant quite specific. We think that smart motorways are not smart at all. They're not safe. Because of the use of smart motorways, people who use the roads are putting themselves in dire danger. People are being killed. So therefore, we want to highlight through a letter to government to say that we need to review the situation. Now, and I know Councillor Bradley in the past said that we need more money to spend on the roads because he knows that the issues about roads and potholes is the Achilles heel of his administration. Now, well, according to Councillor Bradley, when he knocks on doors, that's one of the things that people are talking about. So, I mean, it's not me you've got to get on to, it's get on to your leader, because at the end of the day, that's what he's saying to your Prime Minister. At the end of the day, this is one of the issues that are very important to people, levelling up. Mansfield, we need more money. We've got to make sure that everything's okay, and we need to be moving forward with regards to devolution to bring more investment and stuff into the town, which is brilliant. I just hope that message was being pushed by the Conservatives who lost the deposits. And my friend Councillor Camilleri, who I've not spoken about today, I'm sorry that you lost the mayoral election, but try again next time, and you might.
Councillor Henshaw, just speak to the
Anyway,
chair.
I'm coming round to supporting the motion as amended. We need to write this letter. We need to try and get the government to see fit that these smart motorways aren't smart and they're very unsafe. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. I now call upon Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chairman, and congratulations to you and the Vice Chair. I wish you well, and thank you to the outgoing Chairman as well. In supporting this motion, I can say that this is a sensible approach for this council to take. It is this council's duty to do everything it can to keep our residents safe. Due to the evidence presented today, it is clear that smart motorways are anything but. Campaigners say that the 79 deaths attributed to smart motorways are just the tip of the iceberg. There has also been many, many serious injuries and near misses associated with them, with these death trap roads. Councillor Hollis has already mentioned some of the distressing cases. The fact is, despite semantics from the government, smart motorways have been scrapped because of safety concerns and accidents. It is the correct decision, but it does leave the government open to calls to invest now and scrap existing smart motorways. If it is not safe for the 14 areas that have been scrapped, then surely it is not safe for the 10% motorway network, including parts of the M1 in Nottinghamshire. Edmund King, president of the AA, agrees. He said that as well as scrapping planned smart motorways, it needed to go further and restore a permanent hard shoulder to 375 miles of existing smart motorways. Basically, drivers don't trust them. The technology is not foolproof, and 37% of breakdowns on smart motorways happen in live lanes. And basically, those drivers are sitting ducks, he said. The RAC, meanwhile, said existing smart motorways, which make up 10% of England's motorway network, now had to be made as safe as possible. The possibility of converting all lanes running stretches to dynamic hard shoulder configuration, where the hard shoulder is opened and closed depending on levels of traffic, could be one option the government considers, said the RAC road safety spokesman Simon Williams. Campaigners are fighting hard, and I feel that if we back this motion this afternoon, we will send a powerful message to government that we must put the safety of our drivers and their passengers first. Let's not let the deaths of at least 79 people on these roads be in vain. Please support this motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on your promotion and your Vice Chairman. And can I say, yes, congratulations to Councillor Jackson and his year, a very successful year. Mr. Chairman, I also welcome the announcement that smart motorways will be removed from this from the road building programme. There is definitely, without any shadow of a doubt, a lack of confidence by many road users on this issue. It is horrendous, absolutely horrendous, that 79 deaths have been linked to these smart motorways, and that hundreds of other incidents or accidents causing distress and injury to many other road users is attributed to this system. I now know that 10% of our motorway roads were made up of this system, and the roads going through Nottinghamshire are also made up of this smart motorway system. But what I would like to know, what are the government going to do about this situation, knowing full well that our roads, parts of our motorway roads, are not safe with this system and are putting people's lives at risk? And I fully support a full review of all existing smart systems. Now, if we need resources to put our roads safe, then money's got to be found by the government to put these things right. What I do not understand is how this system was able to develop in the first instance. Surely research should have been done to find out if this project was safe. It seems not. I fully back this motion before us today that says that we are fully behind the actions to oppose the building of smart motorways, Mr. Chairman. And I can say, yes, it would be a good idea if we did know what this £900 million extra that's being invested in smart motorways, what was going to be done about it fully. And that certain, we do need at least 200 million extra to do the best possible job of improving the state of our local roads, which are atrocious. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. I call upon Councillor Lawton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I won't be supporting this motion today. So for several reasons. One is government's already reviewed the situation. I mean, what you're asking us to do is to write to the Minister over something that's already happened. He'll think we're an absolute idiots. He'll think we're stupid. He'll look at it and laugh at us. And let's face it, how many times have we sat in this chamber discussing issues and asked her to write to the Minister? We don't even get a response most of the time. They don't take any notice of us. They're not interested in sort of issues. Can I also say that what has the motorway system got to do with Newark and Sherwood District Council? If you want to debate something, debate issues in adult social care, in young people's care, on our bits of road that we're responsible for. Government are responsible for motorway.
the Highways England, not us. Nothing to do with us. We're wasting our time. Let's do something that's practical, something that's going to make a difference to the residents that we represent. I mean, it just makes it even worse. What you're asking us to do is to make ourselves look idiots in front of central government. They will just laugh at us, and you quite frankly, talk about something we can make a difference with, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. I call upon Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Chairman. As ever, it's difficult to follow Bruce. As we're at Notts County Council, not Newark and Sherwood District Council. And I appreciate that there's some idiocy in the way that you're reading this and the way that your members will support not supporting the amendment. But in doing that, what we're doing is negating the deaths, which I think Councillor Hollis, Councillor Waters have raised. The deaths are paramount in what's been put in. I'm not saying that you don't recognise them. I'm not saying you don't recognise them. What I'm saying is we're moving away from the point of the motion, which is that is paramount, and the structure of the motion that's put in front of you. Also, you can't ignore the RAC quote. If this was health and Dr. Doddy said something, you'd recognise it because that's what he is. This is motorways. RAC have quoted, so they're failing. Yeah, we understand that, they're recognising, and still there's 900 million going to go into 200 odd miles of smart motorway, which people don't want. Certainly not on this side of the, and I can't understand why anybody would want it over there, to be quite honest, because it's not making any sense whatsoever. There's no structure to a safe motorway that is safe, to motorways that are safe. I think the most disappointing thing, and I get why you say it, I understand how you want to put it across to your members, but if you look at the second from bottom line of the amended motion, or let's start at the third, near the end where it says, and advocate that not all of the 900 million, but it says, and advocate that a proportion of this 900 million smart motorway budget instead be diverted to fixing Nottinghamshire roads. Not all of it, which is what you said, Ben. That is a proportion of that 900 million. So it was a proportion of the 900 million that is claimed in here that you ignored. And that's wrong. You shouldn't have done that. There's no need for that. So I'll be fully supporting this amendment. I think it's the right thing to do. I think you should all do exactly the same. I know you won't, but I think you're being misled by the guardians. And to suggest that writing to government, we've got a direct line here, which is, we've all advocated before, to go through, but in writing to it, follow it up for us, yeah? Don't ignore it. Don't say we're wrong. You praise yourself so much about having Ben here as Westminster advocate for us. Let's use it. Let's all be part of this. Let's all be part of this motion to save lives on our motorways. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. Councillor Foll.
Thank you, Chairman. I must, to be honest, I just don't really get this. I mean, we're asking for some really quite straightforward things, I think. I mean, if the fact that the hard shoulder's gone is causing significant safety risk, and surely it is, surely that should come first. I mean, you said about it being in the wrong order. I didn't really understand that. I mean, if you're going to make smart motorways safe, I would have thought that was first an obvious thing to do. And then we're talking about writing to the Secretary of State. So then, are you telling us then that if this county council wrote to the Secretary of State, it would be completely ignored? Because if that's the case, then I think that's an appalling way to treat kind of local government colleagues. Sorry, one final thing, so I forgot. And if it didn't make sense, this motion, why did the monitoring officer approve it?
Thank you, Councillor Foll. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Richard Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I've been sitting here getting increasingly angry by the tone of the debate. Mr. Chairman, it's difficult for me to talk about this. I know what it's like at the age of 12 to return home from school to find out your father's been killed in a motorway accident. Nobody takes this more seriously than me. to hear comments about blood on your hands, to be accused of idiocy, to be told that we don't care about deaths on the road, to hear comments like death roads thrown around willy-nilly, for this to be turned into a political football is disgraceful. We care about road safety in Nottinghamshire. We've got a fantastic record on road safety in Nottinghamshire, both at the county council level and at the national highways level. Road deaths, thankfully, are reducing and have reduced dramatically over the last 30 odd years. And we should all be grateful for that. We should also be grateful that government has stopped the rollout of new smart motorways and has launched a review into the safety of smart motorways. And the jury is out. If you do some homework, if you don't look at the first headline that you come to, if you think about it, there are good reports you can study, you can look at this, and you can see there are good points on both sides of this argument. I will happily stand here and vote to scrap all existing safe motorways, smart motorways, if this report concludes that that's the right thing to do. We don't know what it's going to conclude. I want to see a report that's properly considered, that's put together by experts and that's looked at in the cold light of day, not something that's thrown around for political purposes this afternoon. We should be welcoming the £900 million that's being put into making existing smart motorways safer. Let's cut the nonsense rhetoric, Mr. Chairman, look at the issue that's actually at stake and make a sensible decision this afternoon.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I call upon Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just first of all start by saying how sorry I am to Councillor Jackson for the personal experience that he had, and I know it won't have been easy for you to share that experience, Richard, in the chamber. I just politely say this to you, Richard. I would subscribe to your call for there to be cross-party consensus and a lack of party politics in this debate. You might want to lean just down the row from you and tell your deputy leader that calling people idiots in this debate is not a wise idea, and then lean across to your leader and ask him to stop pointing the finger at the Labour Party and Ruth Kelly, who left Parliament on the 12th of April 2010. So if we're going to have an application of those rules, Richard, let's have them across the chamber without fear or favour. Let me just say this, Mr. Chairman. Having this debate in this chamber, if it saves one life of a resident in Nottinghamshire or across this country, is worth it. And frankly, let me just say this. The fact that the statutory deputy leader of this council thinks that it's not worthwhile debate is a crying shame. And it's a damn good job that he lost his borough seat in the district elections a few weeks ago. And I hope he loses his county seat in the next election, because the behaviour you just showed in this debate falls well below what should be expected of elected members when it comes to a debate like this, because people in this room who have spoken today also speak from personal experience as well. I know, having spoken to them. Let's just scotch two myths that the leader tried to throw around at the start of this debate. One, this motion does not, and you should retract what you say, call for all of the £900 million that's allocated to improving smart motorways to Nottinghamshire's roads. It calls for a proportion of. You do well to read our amendment before standing up and casting around aspersions in the chamber. And let me just say this, secondly, loud and clear to those people who have lost loved ones on smart motorways, who have been campaigning for the reinstatement of hard shoulders for years. This motion calls on the government to do something it still has not done. Stop pulling the wool over the eyes of people who have lost relatives on motorways. Credit should be given to the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, for stopping future projects of smart motorways. I'm a big enough person to stand up in this chamber and say that he should take credit for that, and the Conservative government should take credit for that. But the point being made here is this. 400 miles of smart motorways, dangerous smart motorways, are still going to be in place. And the £900 million that the Transport Secretary has allocated barely touches the sides of instating 150 safe areas. If you are a driver on the remaining hundreds of miles of roads who falls short and has an accident, you are at serious risk of being hit. What is being asked here, clearly, by the Labour Party and the independent councillors are two things. The immediate reinstatement of hard shoulder on the remaining 400 miles of roads is quite a simple ask. And the second thing is, because you're not clear how you're going to spend the £900 million, instead of putting good money after bad, put it here where there is a problem, in Nottinghamshire County Council, where your record as a Conservative MP and your record as a leader of the County Council is absolutely on the line. You lost a number of people behind you, seats in the district elections because of your record as the leader of the County Council in presiding over our roads and pavements. So let's stop throwing the smoke screen about. Let's get behind a letter that's actually about saving lives. You were happy to write a letter that was about saving your seat for the general election, but you're not happy to write a letter about saving lives for residents in Nottinghamshire.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. I call upon Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to say anything in this debate. I wasn't. I wasn't, right. I was listening to it, and then Bruce incensed me actually because your total lack of compassion for our residents over this issue is just shocking. It is. It's shocking, Bruce. It really is. It shocked me, that did, because actually these are 79. If you let me finish, I didn't interrupt while you were speaking. You know, the only the residents are all people who lose their lives on the motorways because of technological changes to the motorways is not a good thing. And believe me, I have seen it firsthand because I live a mile away from Junction 27, and I've seen a caravan being towed by a car going down a smart motorway lane where the hard shoulder should have been. Somebody parked in it and it wrote it off, killed all the family. That's why we fought so hard to get Ashfield Fire Station back open 24/7, because they're the first ones that come to it. And it impacts all of Annesley, Underwood, Bagthorpe, Selston, everywhere. When the motorway closes through these accidents, every single life that's lost on that motorway is a tragedy. And despite the rhetoric of where the money's going or where it's being spent or this other, if you're saying to us that writing a letter to the Secretary of State is a waste of time, then why do we have multitudes of debates in the same vein? And the only reason we're doing that is because it's out of our control. It's Highways England. You know that. And if you already knew that this was the case, why didn't you write to us before we put this motion in? Waste all our time this afternoon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor John Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to you and your deputy, and I wish you well for the coming year. And also a special thanks to Richard Roger, because I think he did make a tremendous effort, particularly with your charity, which will be much appreciated in the centre on Mansfield Road. I've got to rise on this one because what's our first duty? Our first duty is the well-being and the quality of life of our people. And Bruce, you've got it wrong, mate. People knew it. It does affect them. You've got the A1 running around there. You're not that far from getting onto the other motorways. And I just feel, and calling it stupid, I think that's, it's not stupid. What we're trying to do, and what the independent group were trying to do, is keep this in front of people, keep it in front of ministers, so they can actually look. There is clearly a problem. The evidence is there. They're heading fast now to 100 deaths. And the tragedy that comes from that. I don't know what the cost of a death is now. Perhaps John Doddy could tell us from those, from road accidents. I know years ago it used to be about £1 million cost to the state. If you want to be really cruel and put it on financial costs, it was £1 million to the state. It must be far beyond that now. And all the problems that get put on the NHS, the serious injuries, and you'll see people going around after these injuries, strapped up, bolted up, screwed through here, this, that, and the other. It costs a lot of money. All we're saying, and our colleagues here are saying, is can you please look at it? We agree, as Michael said, the Minister has moved fast on it, but I think we move a little faster. And really relating to, mentioned earlier this morning about Ukraine, keeping that, it's dropped off the newspapers now. It's not there a lot. The same with Afghan, the same with, we used to get used to things on Northern Ireland on the news. And all those types of things, they drop out. And this will drop out unless we keep a campaign. Because we ain't going to stop the cars coming on the road, whether they're petrol engines, diesel engines, or electric. They're still going to be there, and it can cause serious accidents. So I do urge you to rethink and to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I call upon Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always difficult to follow the next MP for Gedley when he stands up and speaks so eloquently, but I will. I shall also look forward to meet the next MP for Mansfield, whoever that was going to be as well. But there you go. Anyway, moving back to the actually quite astounding reason why not to talk about something that we don't run the motorway here in Nottinghamshire is a nonsense. The motorway runs the entire length of Nottinghamshire. Sometimes it's in Leicestershire, sometimes it's in Derbyshire, sometimes it's in Nottinghamshire, then it goes back into Derbyshire, back into Nottinghamshire, and then South Yorkshire. But many people who are Nottinghamshire residents use that smart motorway. So it's astounding that we're being told that this authority cannot have a view on something that will affect a lot of our residents. And I mean, this parochiality doesn't affect Newark-and-Shire. Well, so what if it doesn't? I think it does, to be quite honest. As Councillor Clark revealed, it does affect people in Newark-and-Shire. But of course, it could be one of the reasons why the Conservatives have lost control of Newark-and-Shire for the first time since I can remember. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. I'll now offer Councillor Hollis your chance to sum up.
Sorry, we missed Steve Garner.
Steve. Sorry, Councillor Horace. Councillor, please proceed.
Hi. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Richard, for being a fantastic chairman. And of course, well done for John. And Richard, that's it. I've got one right. But I am against smart motorways. Not against anybody in here. I do think they are flawed. Right? The problem we've got with this country, we've got too many cars on the road. And it's about time this government, and we've all done this environmental job, where we say drive here, drive there, aeroplanes and all that. We've done that last year, year before. We want more vehicles off the road, right? And we can get more vehicles off the road by people working from home, getting lorries going at night, and shrinking the motorway system so we can get the inside lane back to what it was. And it's as simple as that. We just keep piling more cars on, and we ain't got the land for building on because they packed up against the house, etc., in different places. And of course the cost, and it is an ongoing cost. So I do think, so I'm going to support this amendment on them grounds that we want a grown-up debate to try and get this tackling traffic through Britain. So this is just one little part of it. Smart motorways are deadly, and we don't need any deaths that we can avoid. So I should be voting for these. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. So I now call upon Councillor Hollis to sum up.
I mean, it lowers the tone when you call people idiots straight out of the gate. I mean, you're the deputy leader of the council. Whatever emotions you might have had next Thursday, don't bring them into last Thursday. Don't bring them into this place. We're talking about people.
That he wasn't going to stand for Parliament again and he was going to have the ear for government. I think both of them have turned out to be untrue based on his current statements. You said that now. But the reality is
2 years ago, the Transport Select Committee said they need to do something about this. And if they'd have listened 2 years ago, 18 people, at least 18 people, would still have their lives. That's the stats. That's coroner's reports. You haven't listened. So exactly as Councillor Clark said, sometimes you do have to spin the plate and keep it in the eye of the government. And Councillor Bradley, you said, in part, some of the deaths were to blame. Read the coroner's reports. They blame it entirely on the smart motorway. Somebody who's had a minor crash and exchanging insurance details that again gets ploughed into by a lorry. That wasn't in part due to smart motorways. That was entirely because of smart motorways. And how long are we going to go? How long are we going to wait till something goes on? You talk about not paying attention. Well, why didn't you pay attention to the Select Committee 2 years ago? I think these are all things that I picked up from the debate. And I think Councillor Jackson, this isn't about pulling words or pulling ballots out of a hat, potentially. It's about less deaths, as we've had with the Transport Select Committee. These are all government infrastructures and Parliament infrastructures that we're just asking you to listen to. I thank Councillor Creamer and Councillor Henshaw, Councillor Payne and others for their contributions. But ultimately, something needs to be done. I'm very fortunate to represent a stretch of the M1, as I know Councillor Oliver is, as I know Councillor Martin is. We see these day in, day out. I can see the junction 28 of the motorway from my house. I see residents of Huthwaite leave every day and get on that motorway with families and kids. Just because they have a flat tyre or a breakdown does not mean that they have to extortionately risk their life just to use our national infrastructure. We know it's unsafe. We now need to do something about it. Clearly, Mr. Bradley, writing report letters to ministers. You only wrote one last week, as I think's been said, probably to potentially save your own seat as MP. Why wouldn't you write a letter now? You clearly agree with the sentiment. I picked that up from what you said. It's not already done because junction 28 included and all stretches of the M1 motorway is still unsafe. And I think actually, let's be honest, I think members on this side are quite happy with how the electorate see things at the minute. But I think members on your side potentially want to see you do something for them. And I speak to you because you seem to speak on behalf of everybody. But I'm going to suspect there's a lot of people, potentially Mr. Mayor behind you sat there, who confidently only told me a month ago he was definitely going to win, potentially probably has you to blame for not winning. So I think I want... Sorry, sit down. Sit down.
Thank you for your point of order. We have to keep it real, Councillor Hollis.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Keep it real, sir. Anyway, I'm not getting as many people know.
Got 15 seconds left.
I'm not political. I'm not getting into that. But, this is a very serious debate, Mr. Chairman, about saving lives, and I think thank you. You said 15 seconds. I've been spoke over for 10 seconds. So anyway, support the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. We're now going to put this to the vote.
Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of the word lie being bandied around. It's not a very nice word. And if these people were in the House of Commons, they'd be out by now if they used the word lie. I think there ought to be a bit of respect and decorum over that side of the House.
Of order, and he particularly called it a point of order, so he's making an issue of it. Right, so for members' clarity, you are voting on the altered motion. And so we'll take the vote now. All those in favour?
Altered motion because they accepted your amendment. It's an altered motion. Keep your hands high, please, members. Votes for. Just one hand.
Oh, right, okay, vote.
You are. So you go 28 for.
Members,
Against?
all those against?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, okay. Mr. Chairman, can we have a
Call for a recorded vote, please. Thank you.
The vote is 28 for, 34 against, so the motion fails.
We have a recorded vote, please.
Oh,
Only 10 hands.
oh, for,
We have 10 hands, please, folks.
yes. Right, we've got it. We're having a recorded vote.
Okay, members. I'm going to do the recorded vote. Nice and steady. Thank you. So, members, for clarity, this is vote on your altered motion, and we'll start with Councillor Adair, Councillor Adams, Councillor Allen, Councillor Anderson,
Against.
Councillor Bailey, Councillor Barney,
Against.
Councillor Barnfather, Councillor Bradley, Councillor Butler,
Against.
Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Camilleri, Councillor Carlton, Councillor Carr, Councillor John Clark, Councillor Neil Clark,
Against.
Councillor Corden, Councillor Cotty,
Against.
Councillor Creamer,
For.
Councillor Darby, Councillor Deakin, Councillor Doddy,
Against.
Councillor Eddy,
Against.
Councillor Elliott, Councillor Fielding, Councillor Fole,
For.
Councillor Garner, Councillor Guilfoyle, Councillor Girling, Councillor Gowland,
For.
Councillor Henry,
For.
Councillor Henshaw,
For.
Councillor Hollis, Councillor Introna, Councillor Richard Jackson, Councillor Roger Jackson, Councillor Kerry, Councillor Lawton, Councillor Madden, Councillor Martin, Councillor Meakin, Councillor Moxon, Councillor Ogle,
Against.
Councillor Oliver, excuse me, is that 4? Councillor Owen, Councillor Payne, sorry Councillor Payne, couldn't you? Councillor Place, Councillor Pringle,
For.
Councillor Perdue Horan,
For.
Councillor Quigley, Councillor Saddington, Councillor Shaw, Councillor Sam Smith, Councillor Tom Smith, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Turner, Councillor Upton, Councillor Waters, Councillor Welsh,
For.
Councillor Gordon Wheeler, Councillor Jonathan Wheeler, Councillor Williamson, Councillor Wilmot, Councillor Zadrosny. Okay, folks, bear with us while we add them up.
So there was 29 for, 34 against. The motion is lost. We move on to motion 2, and I call upon Councillor Kate Pole to move the motion.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to read the motion out if you're relieved to hear. People in this county and in the country are really struggling to pay their bills, and in the coming year, we again be asked to pay more tax. This government is currently a high tax, low growth government. As a result, the tax burden imposed by a Conservative government on the people of this country has risen to its highest level since the Second World War. On top of that, the economy and wage growth have stalled over the last 10 years, and as a result, people are now £400 a month worse off than they would have been if we'd seen levels of growth achieved under the last Labour government continue. As county councillors, all of us should have the residents of Nottinghamshire as our priority. I'm sure we all have. So we want to help our residents and still aim to provide them the vital support they need in these tough times for so many people. So this motion identifies 2 key challenges facing us. First, local government provides a wide range of vital services that our citizens need, rely on and deserve. We simply do not get enough funding to deliver that for them and have not for many, many years. Second, ever-rising council tax bills are making circumstances worse for people already struggling to make ends meet, and the inequality gap is widening as these rises hit those on modest incomes hardest. It's shocking. And at a time when oil and gas companies are making enormous profits because of the illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine, it is a fair and right thing to do to ask this government to step in and find a better solution for our residents. We now have a short-term, badly managed approach to funding local public services, and where has that got us? Do schools have enough money in their budgets to provide for all children and young people to fill their potential? No. Can schools afford the huge hike in energy costs? No. Are our school staff easy to recruit and properly rewarded for their work they do to keep our children safe, happy and able to learn? No. Do we have enough people working in social care in the right settings to meet the needs of our children, families and older adults? No. And Councillor Barney has acknowledged the concern about long-term funding earlier, so that was very welcome. Is our children and young people's mental health being properly looked after in a timely way? No. Are our roads and pavements in good enough order to enable us to drive, walk and cycle in reasonable comfort and safety? No. We've got flipping sinkholes in Worksop. And have we been both proactive and successful in meeting targets to protect our precious environment? No. The list goes on. Something substantial needs to change. So we're calling on this motion on the government to find a solution. Now to address the council tax freeze. The ask is very straightforward. Oil and gas companies are making billions of pounds in profits, obscene amounts in profits, and are being fairly rewarded by the effect of a supply-side shock to the economy resulting from, among other things, the awful and illegal war in Russia that we've referred on so many times today in Ukraine. The government have followed Labour's lead in adopting a form of windfall tax, but in its current form, there are loopholes allowing billions of pounds to slip through the cracks. And if you support government policy for windfall taxes on these companies, why wouldn't you support correcting the fault in the current policy, which is letting billions of pounds fall through a hole in the Treasury's pocket when it could be fixed and spent on freezing council tax? We recognise that we're part of a national picture, and the current cost of living crisis affects the whole country. But we cannot keep asking our residents to continue paying more and more tax while the government starves councils of funding year on year when demand for service grows. The government have slashed the rate support grant, increasing the tax burden yet again on our residents. They've overpromised, then totally underdelivered, and you only have to look at the so-called levelling up debacle to see that. And I'm grateful to Councillor Badley for holding his Prime Minister to account on this week. The government's approach is completely unsustainable, and you don't have to take my word for it, just go back and read January's Cabinet Budget Report. The budget gap has risen from 29.1 million last year to 31.7 this, with inflation set to rise again and a council tax increase of 95% of the possible amount allowed. Something fundamentally needs to change. As a result of the one-year settlement, you said there will be a considerable uncertainty beyond 2023-24, which will, and I directly quote, will remain until future funding announcements are made. So in no way has the funding problem for the short and medium term been safely tackled. In fact, it puts the brakes on any possibility for our council staff who work so hard, so incredibly hard, to propose long-term strategies to deal with the problems we have. The Conservatives often accuse us and the Labour Party of wanting high taxes. You do it all the time, don't you? But here I am today offering all members of this chamber the chance to propose an alternative to endless council tax rises. If you refuse to support this motion, you're effectively asking our residents to continue to pay more in tax, knowing full well that it will lead to further hardship for them and will not solve any systemic problems that our council and many others face. A council tax raise will not cover the cost to deliver these services Nottinghamshire residents need now. It will not give our fantastic and creative officers the opportunity to put in place longer-term plans to implement the changes needed to address the challenges we face, and it won't address this council's growing budget gap. If you don't do more to effectively lobby the government for longer-term funding for settlements now, you will be putting this council back at least a decade. It will walk us further towards a cliff edge, where raising thresholds for services makes them unreachable for most people, and cuts to provision is the only means to set a legal budget. That would be for the ultimate betrayal of our residents. We've discussed the difficulties of engaging more people in meaningful consultation many times, and I know there's a working party talking about that at the moment. But now the responses remain stubbornly statistically insignificant, very small numbers compared to the number of the population. But now, if you want to know what our residents think of these proposals, I think we got a very substantial and clear feedback from our residents last Thursday, didn't we? I'd like to summarise the message I heard time and again. I know my friends behind me. Time and time again on the doorstep, we heard from those who voted in the local elections last week. They're fed up of being taken for granted. They're fed up of things not working and fed up of being asked to pay more and more by the Conservative Party, who crashed the economy in November and continue to let big energy companies off the hook during a cost of living crisis. They wanted change and they got change. Boy, did they get change. They wanted more Labour councillors and they got so many more Labour councillors. So we're asking you all to listen to the very clear message Nottinghamshire residents gave you last week. Put them first. Do the decent thing, support this motion to freeze council tax for 1 year to ease the cruel squeeze on our residents during this cost of living crisis. Make the case to your government that we need a proper, fair and long-term funding settlement that enables us to provide the services our residents need and deserve. Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you, Councillor Fole. Call upon Councillor Creamer to second the motion. Councillor Creamer.
Thank you, Chairman. I second the motion and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Councillor Richard Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry when I read this motion. It forces me to conclude that there can be no quality control in the Labour group, or at least no self-awareness. If there was, someone would have recognised the irony, or should I say crass, brass-necked hypocrisy of this motion, and they wouldn't have submitted it. I can only think the motion is derived from some type of internal memo from the National Labour Party office telling Labour foot soldiers to promote Keir Starmer's latest attempt to look like a Tory, to deflect from his history of backing Corbyn's disastrous agenda for the last 5 years. Even if it wasn't an instruction from on high, Mr. Chairman, you'd still think that someone at Nottinghamshire Labour Group, perhaps with a memory going back more than a couple of years, would say, we can't possibly say that given our past record. Labour as the party of council tax freezes, Mr. Chairman, since when? Let me remind them, under Labour, Nottinghamshire County Council once saw tax increases of 9% and 12% at a time when Labour government was throwing money at councils like this one. In fact, the public backlash was so great that one former Labour finance spokesman had to publish the headline, 9.5%, we hear you, we hear your concerns. Reality is, Mr. Chairman, Labour didn't listen then and they're not listening now. They continued along the same path, eventually more than doubling Nottinghamshire's council tax during the time of the Blair-Brown government between 1997 and 2009. Labour members suddenly want to advocate council tax freezes. Let's continue the history lesson and recall this administration did freeze council tax for 4 consecutive years between 2009 and 2013, Mr. Chairman. That was the Conservative administration. After 28 years of lavish public expenditure and waste by Labour, it was the Conservatives who gave Nottinghamshire residents a tax break in the Reg Adair's leadership of the finance portfolio, reasoning that it was time that this authority modernised, started using the public's money more efficiently, more effectively, rather than going back to residents every year asking for the maximum they could. And did Labour show contrition and support our tax freezes in those years? Of course they didn't. On the contrary, they voted against every single one. What is more, even every so often, Labour members hark back and criticise those council tax freezes in those years, claiming that they've cost this council money in its base budget in the years since, apparently oblivious to the fact that they had already taken far more from the public than they were entitled to in previous years, making Nottinghamshire the highest taxing shire council at the time. It doesn't just tell you the truth about Labour. As far as they're concerned, Chairman, you should take maximum tax that you think you can get away with from the public year after year, because it's always better to have that money in the council's hands or in the state's hands than in the hands of the taxpayer, even if it's not even sure how they're going to spend it. That's old Labour, and that's a socialist way of thinking, and thank goodness we're not down that line here. That's the mentality which still festers behind the veneer that Keir Starmer and his cronies are now trying to create, a kind of second-rate rehash of the facade Blair and Mandelson invented as New Labour. They didn't like it, Chairman, did they? But let me tell you, I was present in all of the internal budget meetings in this budget round, Conservative members and senior officers, which led to the decision to increase council tax by 2.84% and the adult social care preset by 2%. We agonised over it. We argued about it. We didn't want to levy the amounts, even though they were lower than most similar councils. Ultimately, we recommended that increase because of the current financial challenges we're facing, driven by global events, and even then we found a way of not taking the maximum increase that we permitted to take, even more than £600,000 in the hands of the taxpayers of this county. What difference does it make, 2.84% compared with 3%, scoffed opposition councillors? My honest answer was not a huge amount, but it still shows that this administration's commitment to not taking a penny or a percentage point more than the council absolutely needs at a time when we know residents do face the cost of living pressure. I'm still willing to bet that our rise was at least 0.16% less than Labour administration would have recommended if it had had the chance, but I confess I can't prove it because Labour once again didn't even bother to present an alternative budget. I can only point to their past record on council tax and suggest that leopards don't change their spots. So forgive me, Chairman, if I'm somewhat cynical about the Labour group's sudden commitment to council tax freezes, not to mention the way that Sir Keir Starmer proposed to fund such a council tax freeze, which Councillor Bradley will talk about more in a few moments' time. Councillor Fole represents a Broxtowe division, so what did her district council colleagues in Broxtowe think about Starmer's stunt of a zero council tax increase? Well, not a lot. Mr. Chairman, they didn't mention it in a single one of their election leaflets that I saw over the last 6 weeks. And when I recently proposed an amendment to freeze council tax at Broxtowe Borough Council by deleting long-standing vacant jobs which would not have affected service delivery, they rejected it, they ploughed on with their plans, and they maximised the council tax increase. Recommendation A of this motion is a nonsense. It's a gesture politics at its worst. Recommendation B of the motion, pressing the government for long-term funding settlements and increased investment. Just about to finish, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I know times are tough. In the moment, we're working hard to provide financial and practical support through many different channels. But if you're looking for the party most likely to minimise council tax, if not freeze it, you know where to look. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Councillor Jackson. So now, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chairman. On this council, the Independent Alliance put forward a fully costed and legal budget. The Labour group did not. Could the Labour group explain why you've put forward this motion today when you did not put forward a fully costed alternative budget a couple of months ago? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. So,
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can I just remind everyone in the chamber that there's an old adage that all political careers end in failure, and it's an interesting one. That one we shan't mention who mentioned it because he was a bit of an interesting character to say the least. But I can assure you, and I will give this undertaking that. That when it happens to you guys, I won't behave like you are, being arrogant and enjoying people losing. And it's ironic, really, because people on the other side of the chamber lost as well, you know. But there we go. So I will behave with due deference and support, recognising that most politicians actually do the job for the right reason and work hard on behalf of their residents. So I'll now come on to the motion. The motion, I go back quite a number of years actually. In fact, when John Carter was the cabinet member for finance and he was putting the council tax up by 9%, 11%, 13%.
9.5.
So yeah, 9.5 there. Well, I was actually the opposition member, which was arguing that he put the council tax up by sensible. In fact, in some cases we recommended freeze. Took absolutely no notice of me at all. But between 2002 and 2009, the Labour administration. I mean, talk about arrogance in this motion. The Labour administration actually doubled the council tax. Now, what you don't realise is that was 2009. So for the last 15 years or 14 years, our residents have been paying double the amount of council tax they should have done because of the Labour administration sticking the council tax up. And they raised it, and we had the highest council tax in the country by far in Nottinghamshire, all based on the back of Labour economics. And so I find this motion crass. It is politicking over something that they have no intention of doing whatsoever. So I implore on you today to vote this motion down and see what it is. It is a smokescreen. It is about sending a message out to the residents of Nottinghamshire, when actually, in practice, they do completely the opposite. And spend. What will they do? They will revert to the same. That's what they've always done. They cannot stop themselves. They want to spend your money. Tax and spend is what will happen. So do not get drawn in by the smokescreen that is being created by this motion. So I implore everybody in this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Norton. I call upon Councillor Camilleri.
Thank you. I'll promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Well, I've got to say, it takes all sorts, don't it? I've not seen him for nearly 6 months, and I didn't see him for a lot longer, but it was very lucky. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to congratulate you on your job, but I'd also like to say thank you to Richard Butler for being a fantastic chairman of the planning committee. And I think all the planning committee can say we're going to miss him, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah,
yes.
He's got a sense of humour, he's good, and he's a great chairman. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I've got to say that I agree with what Bruce said, but Labour's obsessed with the windfall tax. It's obsessed with it from all the energy companies. In fact, I could say it's the only financial plan that you've got. Right? First, if I remember, it was you were going to save the NHS with the windfall tax. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Right. And then secondly, you were going to pay everybody their heating bills with the windfall tax. Am I right? Yeah, I think I'm right. Yeah. And now you're going to refund everybody's council tax, but you've not thought about it. You never do. So it's easy enough to levy the charge on the oil companies because you can get that easy. But what I want to know how you're going to roll it out. How you're going to get the money in. How's the authorities going to deal with it? Let's take Nottinghamshire. Ashfield put their council tax up by 2.99%. Right? It raised for them for each one I think it's on a Bandio £5.75 for a year. Am I right, Jason? You know that, don't you? Right. So that's it. But Mansfield has 0 rate tax. So how are you going to pay that back? What are you going to do? Are you going to pay 0 rate for Mansfield and you're going to get your money back? And then let's say you live in a high value property where you pay more council tax, right? You get your council tax back and the guy on the lower rate, he gets it. But he don't get as much as you, does he? So that don't seem fair to me. But fairness has never been one of your problems, has it? And also, how's the authorities going to protect the money? Because you all pay different rates. Are you going to have a blanket rate of council tax where everybody pays the same, you claim it all back? You've not thought about it. You never do. It's true though, you never do. And how much is it going to cost councils to implement this, taking the money back? And when, let's be said, you give the money back, so then a year after, you're going to have to put it up again, because that don't really count in your budget because it's gone. You've given it back. I mean, being too complicated, I hope not. Now, Councillor Henshaw talks about over-promising. He's having to go at me, over-promising this and over-promising that. Well, all I've got to say, that's what Labour have always done. They've always promised so much. In fact, they always promise so much, but deliver so little. And I'm not going to vote for this. Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A bit complicated there for me. But.
Thank you, Councillor Camilleri. I call upon Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Chairman. I rise to support this motion. Firstly, I'd just like to say to Councillor Bruce Lawton, I don't take any pleasure in anybody losing seats. I've been on the receiving end when you work for someone that loses their seat, and it's not only heartbreaking for them, it's always obviously impacts other people as well. I don't take any pleasure. Me and you have differences politically. We agree on some things and we disagree on others, but I don't take any pleasure, and I want you to know that, because I don't take any pleasure in it. I'm also involved in the Joe Cox Commission, which is looking at nicer, friendlier politics, and so I want to make that quite clear. People over there are really good at remembering when the Conservatives were in the administration just before we took over as a Labour administration. And I remember it well as well, because I remember the years when you froze council tax, because I was researcher for the then leader of the Labour group. And what happened, and this is the reality of what happened, when you freezed that council tax, you increased the charges for the services for the most vulnerable people in this county. And I can remember those stats, because there's very little that I forget, including a 75% increase for the services for the handy person scheme, which helped vulnerable and disabled people get things fixed in their house, a 50% increase to daycare services. The list goes on and on and on. And still, in 2013, you had £120 million hole in the budget, and you chose to fund a scoreboard over at the cricket ground. And we all remember that. So don't paint this picture that it was all rosy in your last administration. It's all fully documented and out there in the media. I'm going to talk about the reality now with regards to this, because you can point the finger at this motion all you like, but here's the reality. When we were out canvassing and campaigning, like the majority of you would have been, and talking to residents, I had some of the most painful, upsetting conversations that I've ever had with people on the doorstep. The way that people are struggling in this country, in every single corner of Nottinghamshire, I don't even think the leafy suburbs are immune to this at the moment. People are struggling. And it ranges from cost of living crisis, food prices, not being able to feed the children, which represents the fact that food bank usage is absolutely through the roof in every area of Nottinghamshire as well, if you want to look at the statistics. The NHS is quite frankly in a desperate situation. Elderly people, vulnerable people waiting in corridors for hours and hours because they can't get a hospital bed in our hospital here in Nottingham. And I challenge any of you to go on a Saturday night and see your father lying in a corridor and being treated the way he has been treated in our hospitals here. It's an utter disgrace. And when you knock on the door and you hear people saying they can't get an operation, they can't do this, they can't do that, they can't afford this, they can't afford to heat, they've not been able to heat their home over Christmas. Something somewhere has to change, and it has to change quickly. Because the ballot box will decide. It will decide. And this motion here is about pointing out the fact that something has to be done to help people across this county and across this country, and it has to be done quickly. I will end by quoting, and I've asked him if I could quote. I knocked on a door actually in Trent Valley, Councillor Sam Smith and Councillor Adams area, and spoke to a gentleman there that had previously voted Conservative all his life, and turned round and said, "We're voting Labour this time around." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because nothing works, does it? Nothing works, does it?" That's what his was said. Nothing works. Our roads don't work. Our hospitals don't work. You can't get a GP appointment.
30 seconds, Councillor Walsh.
We need a change of government. You should support this motion. I know you won't for political reasons, but you've got to come up with some answers then. So you as a group have got to come up with some answers. So next full council, I look forward to your motion that provides something that's going to support the people of Nottinghamshire.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I call upon Councillor Purzu-Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We were trying to amend this motion, and after much consideration, we decided that it was impossible. We have within it, and we completely understand the sentiment behind the original motion, but we have within it a proposal that has been recycled more times than a bottle of Blue Nun at an overpriced Conservative coffee morning. Okay, there's a few old bottles of Blue Nun going around. Mr. Chairman, we can play this game of tennis between a Conservative administration that has administered one of the highest tax rates in the country, council tax rates, and we know the history and practice of previous Labour administrations, and I picked up the same sentiment that Councillor Fold referred to. People are fed up with just being taken for granted and being expected to pay more and more. And today, as we've been sitting here, as I woke up this morning, the Times radio reporter told us that they were expecting a quarter-point rise in interest rates, and the average variable rate mortgage would go up by £24 a month. And as we were sitting here today, that has borne out to be true. People are feeling the pips squeaking. And we only have a few months before we start to seriously think about next year's budget. And under the present rules, Mr. Chairman, under the present rules, I'm not expecting good news for our residents. We are going to have a miserable autumn, or a miserable summer actually, a miserable summer right through to a miserable winter before we give even probably more bad news. And as Councillor Walsh has mentioned, the feeling is that nothing is working, and we are expecting our officers, whether it's in the highways department or in adult social care or children's services, to be increasingly grappling with a shortfall in proper funding. And as people said to me on the doorsteps, there has to be a way for Nottinghamshire County Councils and all different councils to get a grip on the services that we provide to our residents. And I accept all of us, all 66 of us in this chamber, wish to try and find that magic bullet. But Mr. Chairman, I hope that all our officers such as Councillor Bradley in his role as MP, and our front bench will use their, I hope, influence on government ministers to grapple with this issue of proper council funding, which has gone on, as we all know, for far too long. It's about time this country, this modern economy, went beyond just simply jumping from one year to the next with announcements made barely weeks before we have to put a budget together. This bid and beg culture has got to end. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Perdue-Horan. Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, can I say that I do agree with this motion before us, and I'm not against the energy companies making profits. I'm not against them, but the amount of profits they are making at the present time, they should be prepared to give some of it back to help the people that we are representing. Many of them that we are representing are really in trouble as far as resources are concerned, as far as money is concerned. They're struggling like nobody's business. And what does that cause? Mental health issues. It causes mental health issues terribly. Even our doctor knows that. Correct, yes. And as I say, it all causes other health issues. It also terrible situations it gets families into. Family arguments. Family situations which should never ever happen, because we're all fighting together to make a living and keeping everybody happy. And that's what we should be doing in here. There are so many people, as I say, upset and really struggling in life, and we are here to try and make things better. So why are we not supporting that we take some of this money that's required from as a windfall tax on some of the energy companies? It's so simple. I mean, they're making fortunes. They've never expected to make. They're expecting to make a profit, and I'm quite happy for them to make huge profits, but not the kind of profits that they're making at this present time. It's astronomical that this situation should be happening. And it's scandalous that the profits, as I say, that the energy companies are making. And they're laughing at us all the way to the bank. That's what they're doing. They're laughing all the way to the bank. And so many people, with so many people suffering, having to pay extortionate prices for their electricity and gas, and the food bill for households up 19.2%. Just think of that. Some of them were struggling before, but now they've got to pay an extra 19.2% to eat. Never mind live, to eat. That's absolutely ridiculous. And why are we here? As I'm saying, we're here to represent the people, all the people. It doesn't matter whether they're Conservative, Labour, Liberal, Democrat, anything. That we're here to represent the people, to do our best to help them in every possible way. We would like to see a freeze in council tax. Yes, I realise that. But to do that, the government's got to come up with the money. All the councils are struggling at this present time with trying to give good services, and they haven't got the money to do it. Not the way we would like to do it. That's absolutely obvious. And it seems that the government are not prepared to give us any more money. They're just not prepared to give us any more money. In fact, they seem to want to cut our resources. Never mind give us any extra. So, the motion is asking to deliver a freeze on council tax, paid for through an increased windfall tax on energy companies. Surely, if we talk to the windfall the companies, they should be providing money. The amount of money profit they're making is incredible. There would have been a revolution in some countries if that was happening. There would. Well, as I say, I wish us luck on this issue, that we are able to get some more money. And I wish you all also luck on this on the funding settlements. That would increase local government investment, because I don't think it'll happen. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Call upon Councillor Payne. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, I don't know what coffee mornings Councillor Purdy Goran has been attending, but I'm just pleased to say that I didn't receive the invite. I mean, let me just start with where Councillor Jackson finished off with his sort of Labour Party history tours. I don't think there's ever a county council meeting goes by that you don't mention Gordon Brown and the Gold, or Tony Blair and whatever it is, or some previous Labour Party politician. The problem is, we just ran the debate you had a week ago, and it didn't end too well for you. Keir Starmer's name was on the ballot. Keir Starmer's vision for this country was on the ballot. Rishi Sunak's vision was on the ballot for this country. And what happened? The Labour Party came back to being the largest party in local government in this country since 2022. So we can have a debate until the cows come home and hear, Richard, about what you think about the Tories and what I think about the Labour Party. In the end, the verdict is about the people out there. And I think they sent their verdict squarely and fairly, including in your own seat last week. Councillor Camilleri, the Labour Party never thinks things through. By God. By God. By God, I wish you'd have said that to a few Tory ministers through COVID. Don't you dare stand up and talk to me about not thinking things through. I mean, doshing out money to the councils without thinking out to spend it. I saw the money being sprayed around throughout COVID. I saw the money being sprayed around in COVID for the safety equipment that went to Tory party members' best mates, the guy who was running a pub who claimed that he could give out personal safety equipment, and how much public money went down the drain as a result. £58 billion. And I didn't hear you crying a pipsqueak about it. So if we're going to have a debate about how we spend public money, let's have that debate about how we spend public money. And I tell you what, if obsessing about the windfall tax on energy companies is a badge of honour, deal me in. Because I tell you what, the fact that you're sat there defending BP, £4 billion in the first 3 months of 2023, Shell, £32 billion profits, their largest in a 115-year history, and British Gas and Centrica, £3.3 billion last year, tripling their profits. And if you want to stand there and defend it, while the good people of Nottinghamshire are seeing their weekly shop go up, the price of their council tax go up, the price of their heating bill go up, I know which side of the argument I want to be on every day of the week. And perhaps you should pay a little bit more attention to Rachel Reeves, because unlike the picture that you tried to portray of the Labour Party, the funding for the council tax freeze for a year is quite clear. Let me explain it to you, Councillor Camilleri. We'd raised £10 billion from expanding the windfall tax on energy and gas companies. That's people who are making profits out of an illegal war that's taken place in Russia. And we'd used £2.7 billion of that to fund the council tax freeze. Leaves about 7-point-something billion left to fund other things. And don't stand up here and give all this smoke screen about, I thought you were going to pay for the NHS out of that. The funding for the NHS, doubling the medical school places that you've messed up, increasing the number of midwifery and nursing places for 5,000 a year, district nurses doubling in places, is going to be funded by putting back the 45p tax rate on income for people who earn over £150,000. Again, the right thing to do. And why is it the right thing to do? Because we've got an NHS waiting list that is now £7.3 million. How many months ago was it that we heard Rishi Sunak telling us that NHS waiting lists were going to come down? And what's happened since he stood on the podium? 7.1 million, 7.2 million, 7.3 million. Starmer's right when he says the NHS isn't on its knees under your government. The NHS is on its face. How dare you stand up here and lecture the Labour Party? And I tell you this, Councillor Lawton, you talk about tax increases, and you, Councillor Jackson, talk about tax and spend. This is a Conservative government that's presided over more tax increases than any government in history. The highest tax burden in 70 years. The lowest living standards since the 1950s. 1,034 tax increases introduced by ministers in the House of Commons since the 2010. And as Councillor Welsh says, The people who are paying the price are the people of this county. And they're asking themselves this question: am I better off after 13 years of Tory government? And they dealt the answer to you last week. The answer was a resounding no.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Payne. I call on Councillor Pringle.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Just for a forward-looking council, Councillor Jackson, you love looking back in history when it has no bearing on the situation today. Don't need lessons. I'm quite capable. We face, through your government and your support for your government, the worst cost of living crisis in over 40 years. Proud? Are you proud? Are you proud? Well, you pass comment so often when other people are speaking. I thought I'd give you a chance to pass comment when I'm standing. Yeah? So, the question again, are you proud? Sorry. I'll retract all of that, Chairman. I'll retract that, Chairman. The problem is with a lot of what we're talking about today and a lot of your defence is that poverty is not just financial. It has incredible health effects, mental health effects. And I'm sure John will tell you this. If there was something different that could aim at saving monies or supporting people better than what's been put on here, I need to see it, because I think this is a direct approach that people can recognise. And I know you're going to say no, and I'm sure if Nigel was here, he'd be saying, no, we can't do that. However, the situation has been costed, it's available, the funding returns would come from those who you are ignoring, Councillor Camilleri, and let him run away with Robin Hood bags of money. Yeah, you're letting them run away with it. Don't do that. There's no reason to do that. Our residents outside these windows are more important than anybody that's a shareholder in BP. I can assure you of that. Well, as far as I'm concerned, anyway. The second part of this really does come down to the availability of what we've got in Westminster, and I accept the fact that you've got a path, Councillor Bradley, and that you use it. And it is really time, Councillor Barney, Councillor Taylor, everybody that sits in opposition on this, really do want some long-term support so that we can plan. And that's not a negative. I'm not asking people to take sides. That's an obvious thing to come out of this council chamber that Westminster should recognise. And I dare say councils up and down the country are in the same boat. And we can refer back to the billions that have been wasted on PPE and during the COVID. We can refer back to that. But there has to be a future look. And that has to be, the immediate effect has to be to support our residents. And this is a positive way in doing so, which can be returned. And certainly the long-term funding in part 2 of this is something which substantially we all should be agreeing on here, to be quite honest. And I'm slightly fed up of the tittle-tattle between what happened last week. We know you lost 1,040 seats nationally. We know you had your worst result nationally that you've had since 19. We know that, okay? We can't change that. Only you can start changing it if you agree to support this motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pringle. I call on Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chairman. Fellow councillors, read this motion, and I have to say I read it about 5 times before I really understood the implications of what I was reading. It's a bit like being back pre-2010 when the Lib Dems suddenly became further left than Labour without having to move. Except, of course, for Broxtowe, where their new local Labour candidates are looking forward to presenting a progressive socialist agenda. Oh, sinister does that sound, but there you go. Council tax and rising council tax is one of the biggest bones of contentions for residents. Since 2017, council tax has risen at an unprecedented level. Of course, any percentage council tax in Nottinghamshire County Council hurts residents significantly more than rises in parish, towns, districts and boroughs, with the exemption of Stapleford Town Council, who tried to raise their preset by 84% one year. Take, for example, this year's rise in council tax. Nottinghamshire rises cost the average Bandy council taxpayer an extra £79 a year, but at councils like Broxtowe, a similar percentage rise was about a fiver. There is no doubt that residents feel aggrieved at paying council tax to the county council, especially when they consider the diabolical state of the roads and pavements. As someone who was involved in the budgetary setting process at Broxtowe for this year, it's very clear that the strong advice that comes from the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities is that we must put up council tax by the maximum. There is a clear and obvious threat that if we don't, we will lose out in additional funding. Then there's the cumulative impact of council funds for the future. On the 30th of March 2023, it says in the motion, Labour Party leader Sir Keir Starmer stated that he would freeze council tax rises for the year 2023-24 if Prime Minister. Well, he isn't. I get the sentiment here because, like you, in the Labour group, I too was knocking on doors and I too was coming across cases of real distress and poverty. It was a pity, though, that Sir Keir didn't say this in January or, say, February. If he had, Labour-run councils like the ones in Greater Manchester, Sheffield, Leeds and others wouldn't have put their council tax up by the maximum. In Greater Manchester, of course, it was even worse, with another mayoral preset rise. You know, the preset we won't have across the East Midlands Combined Authority. Well, we'll wait and see on that one. I now address the elephant in the room, and this time it's not Brexit. Another one of the herd of elephants is the fact that Nottinghamshire Labour Group didn't even bother to propose a council tax freeze here in Nottinghamshire in February. You can't put a motion before this council without pointing out that you failed to even offer an alternative, the only group on this council to fail to do so. It's a bit... I think this policy is a bit gimmicky, to be honest with you. I know for a fact that Sir Keir Starmer has issued a memo to Labour council leaders to cut council tax within 100 days. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in Midel Medulovic's office when he got that message. I know it wouldn't have been very good. Can I give some advice then to some of the Labour authorities in the county? Bassetlaw still charge 12% council tax to the poorest people in their borough that earn more than £92 a week. Nottingham City charge 20% of their council tax to those people. And it's, you know, what was it, what they say? Physician, heal thyself. Well, that's a good starting point for you. There are some things in this motion that we can all agree. Firstly, the call on a multi-year settlement. Quite how this council can run one-year settlements is impossible to know. And I'll move on from that. Windfall taxes are one-off. They're not for funding local government. And it really does show a lack of understanding of local government in Sir Keir Starmer's department if he understands that windfall tax is the answer to local government funding. It most certainly isn't. It's for insulation and infrastructure, one-offs that deliver long-term infrastructure. It's not for things like this. There are other ways to do it. And really, it's too late. The opportunity is gone. It's like releasing a Christmas record in March and being surprised when it doesn't make Christmas #1. It's too late for Keir Starmer to say this. It's gone. The opportunity has gone. And even if it had gone, they didn't propose a council tax freeze when they had the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. I now call upon Councillor Henshaw.
Blimey, thank you, Chair. I thought my mind went back to the dim and distant days of the later Liberal and Conservative governments, and the coalition And Steve, they didn't come out of that with any resemblance of decency, in my opinion. But things change, things change. That's why we're putting forward this motion, because we're not set in the past. We're looking forward. We're looking forward to the future for this authority and for Nottinghamshire. And it's been mentioned about people losing the council seats. And I was always told this by an old and trusted member of Mansfield District Council when I was a young lad. And he says, have magnanimity in victory and humility in defeat. So show a bit of humility. And, you know, at the end of the day, I've been in a position where I've lost an election, especially in 2003 when Mansfield Independence came in and the white floor with us. So it's took me 20 years to be in a position where we've reduced Mansfield Independence down to 3 councillors, you know. And I'm going to be looking forward to working with my ex-Mansfield Independent friend, who is now not Labour. He used to be the Conservative, perhaps the new Conservative leader on Mansfield District Council, who will be leading a small yet not insignificant number of Conservatives, and I'm going to look forward to having lots of debates with you in the future. In relation to the motion, yeah, I know. In relation to the motion which I support, now then, I'm taking no lectures from the Conservatives in relation to economics or economic issues. Now, through you, Chair, let's do a straw poll. Who's going to put their hand up and say, on your side?
Getting out of control.
Oh, sorry.
Can you
sorry,
just speak to the motion,
no,
please?
It's just,
If you want to do this
the
job,
straw poll is,
you're going to have to pay
who
me
was
more
in
than you've
favour of
offered.
Liz Truss's economic policies? On that side, stick your hands up. There we go. Nobody. Nobody. So I'm taking no lessons from you, especially on economics at Nottinghamshire, when the last Labour administration came in and there was a £100 million deficit, black hole, that we had to sort out. So there we go. And if, as it says in the motion, if the windfall tax is such a bad idea, why did you adopt it? Why did you? Yes, but
what did you use it for?
Exactly. The overall principle of a windfall tax you were against, and then when you saw in which way the wind was blowing, you changed your mind. So all we're saying is, change your mind again, get that money, put it into local government. Now that's simple, and that shows the difference between you, sorry, not you particularly, your
all of you,
your group and our group, because we can change, we can adapt, and we can move forward, and that's the difference. And I suppose that's the old terminology about being a Conservative, because Conservatives conserve things and never want to change things, as long as it don't mean that the rich have to give a little bit more to the poor, who's actually struggling now, and knocking on doors, people who are struggling to pay their electric and gas bills, £2,500 minimum. What's that all about? You can't go out there and defend that, irrespective of what you believe in. People can't afford to feed themselves 15% on food prices. What's that all about? People going to food banks in the 21st century can't feed the kids. Well, I'm glad the council leaders moved away from what he did say about working class people having children years ago. And I'm sorry to bring that up, Councillor Bradley, but that perhaps shown a train of thought. People are struggling. People are really feeling the pipsqueak. Mansfield District Council didn't put their council tax up. Now we can have a debate on whether or not it's a good idea to put council tax up or not. Some would advocate that it's not.
30 seconds.
Some would advocate. Please support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. If members can speak to the motion, that was going to help a lot. And I wonder why I'm mentioning it when Councillor Henshaw speaks. I just wonder. So I'll call.
can I continue the congratulations to you on your new role, and those who have left their role, congratulations for running such a fantastic year. Just a few things from me, really. I just want to ask a bit of a question about how, as a party not in government, could you put forward a suggestion for a council tax freeze that should be backed when you can't possibly be in government? That threw me. And I'm continually confused why that keeps happening, and why you insist on pushing national policy at district council level. The whole election we just went through was a consistent push of national policy through district council elections. Again, things you can't control. And I'm really glad, Michelle, you spoke to the one Conservative voter in Trent Valley that backed what you believed in. The other 100 that we increased our majority by obviously paid no attention whatsoever. But thank you so much. If you drop their number over, I'm sure we could have a chat with him about that. Yeah, back to the motion. Yes. Come on, they've all had it. Come on, John. So look, I mean, I just want to say that I don't think that this is feasible. It's something that I said again that is not in line with reality. Look, again, we went up a seat, and so we did put the national trend as so it's being proposed, and we're really proud of that, and we're really proud of the increased majority. That's also got to do with this motion as well. I'm just trying to find the paragraph it relates to. Oh yeah, there's a bit that says council chairman. I can relate it to that. Look, nothing else to say really, other than we won't be back. I won't be back in it. I can't speak for everybody. I won't be back in this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's really interesting to hear people talking about national election figures during this debate, because, of course, here in Nottinghamshire, the Conservatives gained seats in Mansfield, gained seats in Basildor, gained seats in Gedling. In fact, Michael held on to Rushcliffe Council, and even in Newark, where we lost seats. It wasn't to you lot. You lot didn't even field candidates in those seats. So keep dreaming, and we'll see how things go. In relation to the motion, Mr. Chairman, this idea of a windfall tax, we've already heard from Councillor Henshaw that, of course, we have actually already done it, and we introduced this windfall tax at 25% when Labour were calling for 10% at the time. Rachel Reeves keeps saying we need to tax these energy firms to support families' energy bills. Literally exactly what we have done, in fact, to the tune of some £100 billion of energy support. But she's still arguing that we haven't done it, just pretending that it's never happened. Now it's for council tax, of course, and even Channel 4 Fact Check have twice called her out on this to say that what she has said on the windfall tax is just not true. We've heard two different figures. We've heard Councillor Payne say it's £10 billion. Rachel Reeves says it's £8 billion. Neither of those figures, I think, really stack up, because you're all talking about global profits when actually we can't tax global profits in the UK. I know of BP's £4 billion profit, very little of that comes to the UK, and some of it that does actually pays our pensioners here at the County Council because we invest in it. So it's absolutely ridiculous. A prime example of Labour's brilliant grasp of mathematics, that they continue to ask us to do the thing we've already done, to fund the programme of energy support that we've already funded, and at the same time spend the same money on a council tax freeze that can't be implemented. Sounds like a brilliant idea to me. On council tax, we've already heard that Labour doubled council tax in Nottinghamshire during their period in government, as well as here at the County Council. So ironic, as Councillor Adams says, that we're pushing now national council tax policies, trying to mislead people in local elections that if they vote Labour on Thursday, you'll get a council tax freeze, perhaps maybe in a year if we win an election, maybe further down the line. That little bit of small print wasn't on the leaflets, I noticed, in last week's elections, in the same way as if you vote for the Labour district councillors, they'll sort the roads out that they've got no control over either. So keep on pushing that, and we'll see whether people believe you. I'll leave it to all your Labour councillors who promised to fix the roads at the district council to sort that out for us over the next 18 months. Now they've made those commitments. And in reality, even during the course of this administration, through the course of 12% inflation around the country, we've still never taken a maximum council tax rise, nor do we want to, nor will we in the future, because we will only take what is necessary to run this council and not a single penny more. In fact, we've gone from being the highest tax council in the country under a Labour administration to not even in the top 10 anymore. And last year, our council tax position was in the lowest third of any equivalent county tax council in the country. So let's bear in mind what people actually do rather than what people talk about. Councillor Walsh, you said, why don't you do a motion? Well, we're the administration. We do the budget. So we put forward a budget with council tax position in the lowest third in the country. You presented no alternative whatsoever. And in the end, we passed a budget because you guys have no other options. You stand here and say we're not doing it right, but present absolutely no other alternative for us to deliver. And we put some £15 million into supporting residents, the most disadvantaged residents in our county over the last 18 months or so, through schemes like Household Support Fund and others. We've just announced, Councillor Cotton just announced a further scheme to support community groups who are helping with living costs. The government programme is over £100 billion. It's the single biggest welfare support package ever in the history of this country. And still Labour will argue it's not enough money, it's not enough money. And they will spend that money they've already spent on something else, on this as well, and hope that nobody looks at the details. The truth is, this policy, as Councillor Camilleri has already said, isn't even deliverable. A blanket freeze, regardless of circumstances, across all councils. How would Nottingham City Council feel about that? Because their finances aren't exactly in great shape. Would you fund Nottingham City Council more because their black hole is bigger than ours? Or are you giving it back in bandings? So you're freezing council tax. Doesn't that benefit the richest people with the biggest houses the most? Yes, it does. Not exactly a socialist vision, is it? What's the cost of that? Can't tell me. You argue that care is broken, so what's the benefit of limiting funding to local government? Why would you devolve on the one hand, which is your policy as well, and on the other hand, take away local determination around council tax? What happens when the windfall tax ends? How are you funding it then? None of it makes any sense, and none of these questions have been answered, which is why this motion is absolute nonsense.
Chairman. Okay, sorry. It's Councillor Welch, not Walsh. It's Councillor Welch.
Okay.
And Zadrozny.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Gowland.
Thank you. Okay, so freezing council tax expenditure hits the poorest in community hardest, as Councillor Welch said. Increasing council tax rates hits the poorest most in society. That's clear, it's a regressive tax. So the first thing we need, a government that's actually in control, is to sort out the council tax. But because of that, we know that the average council tax per household is lowest in Labour-controlled authorities of the country by £329 compared to Tory-controlled. Don't look at me like that. I can do the maths.
Yeah.
And £459 compared to Liberal councils.
You can.
Liberal Democrat, if we're getting names.
Okay, Liberal Democrat, apologise. So the windfall tax that we're talking about comes actually from people putting money in their meters to get their electric, putting money in their car, petrol in their cars to pay to go to work. It's people's money going to the big companies. It's people paying their council tax to big companies and their streetcar tax to big companies who are putting smart motorways in and building big infrastructure projects. We need better taxation on the big companies. We need higher rates of income tax for the highly paid. We need wealth tax. We need capital gains tax to put money back in the pockets of the poorest in society.
Thank you, Councillor Gowland. Councillor Zadrozny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my first opportunity to congratulate you on your ascent to high office there. Congratulations. Mr. Chairman, it's a bizarre debate, really. Obviously 3 or 4 months too late. And I find myself standing in between big party politics here in a way that often happens, but it has struck me as a bit bizarre that it's in May and not in February, and it's a bit bizarre that it's happened in the way it's happened just now. And I think there's a number of things about the debate that's made me rise to my feet today, Mr. Chairman. Clearly, this was a speech I'd have loved to hear from Councillor Fowle in the budget debate. I would have really welcomed that, and I would have hoped that we could have had some cross-party working on that. And it struck me also as odd that a couple of times I heard from the Labour group that they've been knocking on doors and they found out that people are in pain, people are struggling. Like they took that election, it took knocking on the doors to realise what a terror people have been facing for months and months now. And
it strikes me as bizarre, and I wish they'd have got to that conclusion very quickly before the budget round. Mr. Chairman, we've had, I mean, even Councillor Rostons, who saved his seat by 18 votes, was on the basis of leaflets that said, I will freeze your council tax for 4 years if I'm elected to Ashfield District Council. I've got them downstairs, and I've seen them the length and breadth of Nottinghamshire from people desperate to save their seats. And let's be honest, this is nothing other, between the big parties, of show business politics that does nothing good for anyone. The Conservatives did freeze council tax here for a number of years, and actually, in hindsight, as a big advocate for it, I think it was an absolute bloody disaster. It's took something out of £100 million out of the Nottinghamshire economy, out of frontline services. So, out of frontline services, and Councillor Welsh was quite right. What you did to prop that up instead was put fees and charges up on some of the most poor and most deserving people in our county. And so, Mr. Chairman, I think the real thing is, and I'll pinch another line from Councillor Welsh, she said nothing works, does it? And it was a very wise voter in Trent Valley, as far as I'm concerned, a very wise voter who said nothing works, does it? What clearly doesn't work in our country, and certainly in Nottinghamshire, is big party politics. Because you two yard-booing at each other is exactly the reason why Councillor Madden sat here, Councillor Darby sat here, Councillor Oliver sat here, because the last 3 by-elections in this county were won by independents. That's why independents across the country have gone up net seats 6 or 7 years in a row, because people are fed up of this. They see it exactly for what it is, that you think you might get a few brownie points, and you know that in reality you can't put it up. And we all know, in reality, unless Keir Starmer does give some serious cash and you're running the council, that you'll have to put council tax up anyway, because if you value those services that our residents absolutely rely on, then there's no other choice at the moment. So we all face that bloody difficult decision. I didn't want to put council tax up at Ashfield. And you go, do we put it up in an election year? Do we play that game? Well, of course not, because ultimately we run 800 services that are vital to residents in some of the most deprived communities in the country. And that's why, Councillor Carr alluded to it, in Ashfield, where we have power, we still provide 100% council tax support scheme. Mansfield Council froze their council tax, but cut their council tax support scheme. So they looked like they were giving something to everybody, but played a game and charged poor people more. That's not real politics. It's this showbiz tit for tat that annoys people. Councillor Bradley said, we make the budget. Well, let's face it, then it was crap. It was crap. And the reason is, and we put an alternative down, and the reason is because you don't talk to anybody. And even the curmudgeonly councillor Cutts decided to have select panels where across the council we got people together to sit round and see if we could discuss department by department where we could agree to try and do something better. And let me tell you something. Listen to me a minute. You need to take a lesson out of that book. Because you've already started working on the budget. These have just realised you do one. Now, if we don't start working together, on some of those things, then together we will fail everyone in this county. I expect the next budget to have a lot more consensus. We might not agree on everything, but if we don't do that, with shortening budgets and more pressures on our families, if we don't work together, there's only certain people we let down. And none of us want to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Zadrosny. I call upon Councillor Barney.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, I, for one, have quite enjoyed this debate, even though it's gone on far too long, and I'll try not to extend it too much further, but because it has redefined, Jason, why I actually am a Conservative, why I am on this side of the bench and not that side, and certainly not over there where you never have to nail your colours to the mast on the issue at all. Just go with the wind in whatever direction it seems to be sailing. But I have heard in this chamber this afternoon the expression of profit as being somehow a dirty word, something that's not to be... Profit is a wonderful thing, and this is where I wholeheartedly disagree with some of my colleagues on the other bench. Dear Councillor Gowland, who I agree on so much from climate change. Tax, tax, tax. No, no, no. Profit, profit, profit. The only way we can pay the bills, the only way that we can do the things that the Conservatives have done through the most difficult times of my almost 50 years on earth, where, by the way, we've had a massive global pandemic where we managed to link arms across the chamber, across parties, and pay the wages of our nation. That's why the tax burden is so high at the moment. And on the back of that, we've got a war in Ukraine that's driven up global inflation, which has put the costs up horribly, horrendously. Now, sometimes I think members on my side of the chamber might think I'm a little to the left, perhaps a little bit too far to the left, because I love public services. I love spending money. I love spending tax money. Where does that come from? It comes from profit. So let's celebrate profits. Let's celebrate profits. Let's not do them down. And let's tax at a reasonable rate, reasonable, Penny Gowland, reasonable, because otherwise industries will leave our country and go elsewhere. We need growth here. We need it now. That's why I'm a Conservative and proud to be so. And thank goodness I'm not an airy-fairy all over the place. Don't know what I believe today. Independent. Well done, the Labour Party, for nailing your colours to the mast. And well done, the Tories, for nailing yours. Long may it continue.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. Councillor Garner, would you speak?
Second time today. Congratulations on your job. No, seriously. A magic bullet. I've come out with a magic bullet. Why don't we go unitary authority, save this council money, because that's what you were talking about generally in Nottinghamshire. So come on, bring it on. Unitary authority.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Garner. So now we've got no more speakers. So we've got Councillor Creamer, who reserved his right to speak. Councillor Creamer.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it really short. I've got some written stuff as well, but just to some of the questions that made, and thank you, Councillor Barney, for mentioning us about the environment. And yes, we're not actually opposed to profit. When it comes to profit, we want the people to profit. We want actually the people and the residents to profit, not extreme profits going to some bank in the middle of nowhere in a tax haven. We would like the profits to stay over here and be invested over here. So profits, no big problem with that. It's been mentioned by 2 or 3 people about why we didn't put a budget through. Well, as we said at the day, if you remember, we said we couldn't support the Tory budget. So putting an amendment to it and then supporting 99% of it, we couldn't do it, and we didn't want to support that budget at all. They put a small amendment to it. For anybody listening on the radio, they didn't put a full budget. They put an amendment to the Tory budget, which meant they actually supported most of that Tory budget. So that's why we didn't put one forward. So lay that to rest. You actually supported the Tory budget, pure and simple. You didn't put an alternative. You put an amendment. We didn't vote for it. An amendment. But that's well, that's up to you. Right. When it actually council tax, it's been mentioned again about who's done this relief, who's done that at district level. Well, just to point out that Gedling, we're looking after our members as well and our electorate, and we put 100% support on relief. So at Gedling, 100%. This is how things work. Everybody does things slightly differently. But at Gedling, we're in a reasonable position at the moment, if anybody can be said to be in a reasonable position. And we will continue to support our electorate and continue to support the poor people. In Gedling, the same as most of this county, the tax burden is actually on the B's and C's. The D's we have, but the majority of A, B's and C, they are lower taxpayers. Yeah. That's why we need to have more money, unfortunately, to pay for the services. The services cost the same here as they do in Kent, but the houses down here are a tenth of the price in Kent. So we have differences. It's right for us to mention that, even though most people won't, in the base. So again, I'll thank. Oh, and before I go on, apologies when I thanked the new chairman and partner there, I forgot to mention Roger, and congratulations. Not just thank you, but congratulations on your last year. Brilliantly done, both in here and outside the chamber. So yeah. No, I haven't finished yet. I'm going to waffle on. I'm going to use my waffling time. So there we go. There we go. And you'll have to listen. Well, I hope you listen. Well, I'll try to waffle coherently. Right. Right, so the first people across county, and specifically the residents we serve here in Nottingham, are really struggling. This has already been said by several people here, and agreed to even over there that people are struggling. The problems we have with this authority is harming the council's ability to deliver services. Nobody's disagreed that we actually need long-term plans, that we actually need diversity, we need investment, a 3-year budget, etc., etc. These 1 and 2 years doesn't help anybody when it comes to forward planning. It doesn't actually help anybody when it comes to employing people, as already been said by others here, to actually plan. So we do have problems, and they do need addressing. And we've got this particular way of addressing them. And if you read in here, you've been on about the windfall tax as well and all the rest of it, and how it would be spread out, Councillor Camilleri. Government grants. It's how it actually comes. It's what the government gives us. So it'll come down by formula anyway. When it comes to the next year, that's fair enough as well. We've heard the tax burden has risen to its highest level. Growth has been virtually stagnant since 2010. There's what working people in Nottingham across the UK are now £400 a month worse off. So we are asking the council to advocate for government to step up. Again, government to actually help local authorities. We are far more efficient as local authorities at spending money. Even though we disagree what when the PPA came in, this council and the district council work brilliantly together. So we are the best places to spend that money. So we're asking you to ask the government to step up and fund council tax freeze next year, paid for by a proper windfall tax on big energy companies. Again, the price has already been made, how much they've made in a quarter. Who also avoid paying their fair share of tax. And yes, it might go to our pensions and all the rest. But I would like to see just exactly how much.
Cream, your time's up.
Is it up?
Yes.
I do apologise. I thought I had 5 minutes as a seconder.
You did. You gave me the 37 one.
I've waffled. Anyway, support this motion. Apologies, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. I now call upon Councillor Fowle for her right to reply. Councillor Fowle.
Just very quickly, in terms of kind of losing seats, I absolutely was not gloating, and if that's what came across, I apologise. Anybody who puts their head above the parapet and stands for office with the council, I admire. I actually admire hugely. I really do. The point I was making is we got a very clear message from our residents, and we cannot ignore it. And to answer the Chris has made over here, we listen to our residents all the time, not just at election times. And this message has been very clear now for an awful long time. And to say that you don't always levy the maximum council tax, 95%, come on. I mean, okay, you're accusing me of not being very good at sums, but I know that one's rubbish. Okay, so and just again, in terms of the kind of responses that we've just had from you, what came across from me was a patronising history lesson. We're talking about now. Our residents are struggling now. We want a quick and easy solution now. So what is wrong with actually taking some of the huge profits from the energy companies? And again, profit keeps the economy going. I've not got a problem with that. But these profits are huge. They are obscenely huge. So I don't really see what the problem is with that. And you talk about our economic competence. Well, I'm going to kind of pick some of the thread that Councillor Henshaw used. You know, just 2 words: Liz Truss. And I don't say that just flippantly. People paid into their pension for years and years and years. And Liz Truss's actions in that short time, was it 45 days or something of being Prime Minister, significantly reduced some people's pensions, and these weren't rich people. And to say again, in terms of tax, you keep saying about tax and spend. This government now, they're levying the biggest tax since the Second World War, and you still accuse us of high tax party. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that because I think an awful lot's been said. Thank you to everybody in terms of their contributions. I think it's been a very interesting debate. I think we all know where we stand, which I think is very useful. But please support the motion. It's a good one.
Thank you, Councillor Fowle. So I'm going to put motion 2 to the vote. All those in favour?
Or 17. Okay, against.
All those against? Okay.
That's 35. Abstentions.
Abstentions.
What's John? He voted for. He voted for. Oh no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, we didn't see him.
Can we have a recorded vote, please?
Second.
Recorded vote.
So we need the 10 hands. I think that's sufficient. In fact, it is.
Okay, members, here we go again. We'll do a recorded vote. Okay, if I could ask you to be quiet, please, and just make sure that you're clear when you shout. It was a little tricky before with some of the comments that were made, so I'll go through the roll call and recorded vote, starting with Councillor Adair. Yes. Councillor Adams. Yes. Councillor Allen. Councillor Anderson.
Against.
Councillor Bailey.
Against.
Councillor Barney.
Against.
Councillor Barnfather.
Against.
Councillor Bradley.
Against.
Councillor Butler.
Against.
Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Camilleri.
Against.
Councillor Carlton.
Against.
Councillor Carr. Councillor John Clark.
For.
Councillor Neil Clark.
Against.
Councillor Corden. Councillor Cotty.
Against.
Councillor Creamer.
For.
Councillor Darby. Councillor Deakin. Councillor Doddy.
Against.
Councillor Eddy.
Against.
Councillor Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Fielding. Councillor Fole. Councillor Garner. Councillor Guilfoyle. Councillor Girling.
Against.
Councillor Gowland.
For.
Councillor Henry.
For.
Councillor Henshaw.
For.
Councillor Hollis. Councillor Introna.
Against.
Councillor Richard Jackson. Councillor Roger Jackson. Councillor Kerry. Councillor Lawton. Councillor Madden. Councillor Martin. Councillor Meakin. Councillor Moxon. Councillor Ogle.
Against.
Councillor Oliver.
For.
Councillor Owen. Councillor Payne. Councillor Place. Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Perdue Horan.
Abstain.
Councillor Quigley.
Yes.
Councillor Saddington. Councillor Shaw. Councillor Sam Smith. Councillor Tom Smith. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Turner. Councillor Upton. Councillor Waters. Councillor Welsh. Councillor Gordon Wheeler. Councillor Jonathan Wheeler. Councillor Williamson. Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Zadrosky. Okay, we'll top the numbers up.
So we have a result. We've got 18 votes for, we've got 35 against, and we've got 7 abstentions. That means that this motion is defeated. Thank you, councillors. Here. Motion 3. I now call upon Councillor Penny Gowland to move motion 3. Councillor Gowland.
Thank you. So I think we all agree that active travel is very important for the community in lots of different ways. It's good for just general well-being, it's good for health, and it's good for the climate, both pollution locally and CO2 globally. The council acknowledges that active travel is important, and a stated success measure of the council plan, the Nottinghamshire plan, is that more people are able to travel around the county easily and safely by active travel means. But the problem is that we know people are put off travelling using active travel measures because of the risk to them having an accident. Now, in Nottinghamshire, we can be really proud that the death and serious injuries to car drivers, to motorcyclists and to pedestrians has pretty much halved for all groups since between about 2005 and 2018. For cyclists, it's not changed. In fact, it's marginally gone up. With the adoption of electric bikes, the option for cycling becomes available to much wider range of people. People who may not feel confident actually cycling great distances may be able to use an electric bike, but they won't feel so confident to do it if they don't feel safe on the roads. The number of cycle trips went up dramatically in 2020 for obvious reasons. People felt the roads were safe, there were many less cars, and of course fell back in 2021 when they no longer felt safe. What we would like the council to do is to acknowledge there's a problem with cycling safely, and to collect data on hotspots of cycle risk, ask the residents where they know there are hotspots, identify these hotspots and find proper solutions. And these solutions are not always going to be cycle lanes. We can see that. There are places that just aren't feasible. So in that case, we need to redesign the junctions to make them safe for cyclists. And I would also call upon the council to look at the pothole rules. You know, the 4 centimetre rule we're also familiar with. 4 centimetres in the middle of the road, cyclists don't care. 4 centimetres in the gutter, it's a death trap. So we need the council, please, to identify the locations of hotspots for cyclists and then come up with a plan to solve those hotspots. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gowland. I now call upon Councillor Henshaw to second the motion.
Thanks, Chair. I second the motion and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. Are there any people who'd like to speak to the motion? Any members? Councillor Clark, Neil Clark.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. The Conservative Group likes to propose an amendment to this motion. So, with your permission, if I pause to allow officers to distribute the amendments, and then I'll explain its contents.
Thank you, yes. So the amendment will be distributed to everybody. I call upon Councillor Clark. I call upon Councillor Clark to move the motion because everybody's got a copy.
Sorry, is it accepted? Oh, no. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I wish to move this amendment. The Conservative Group supports the spirit of this motion, of the original motion, but we believe it needs amending to recognise the full range of people covered by the term active travel. The original motion states in its opening 3 words that it is about encouraging active travel. But the motion then seems to focus almost exclusively on cyclists, when actually the definition of active travel is a lot broader than that. The Active Travel England website states, and I quote, "Active Travel England is responsible for making walking, wheeling and cycling the preferred choice for everyone to get around. Our objective is for 50% of trips in England's towns and cities to be walked, wheeled or cycled by 2030. By making everyday journeys simple, easy and fun, Active Travel England is working to give people the choice to leave their car at home." Therefore, Mr. Chairman, our amendment makes clear that we are talking about walking, wheeling and cycling, because the road safety concerns raised by the original motion are relevant to people using all these modes of travel. This includes mitigating obstacles like potholes, busy road junctions and more besides. The phrase active travel is not actually used verbatim in the Nottinghamshire Plan, but it is true to say that the environmental value of encouraging more walking, wheeling and cycling is recognised within the Nottinghamshire Plan, and this will indeed help to tackle the climate emergency this council declared a couple of years ago. I take slight issue with the implication that we are not already taking steps to improve the walking, wheeling and cycling experience, because this investment has been going on for several years. That said, our amendment is happy to commit to continuing that work, including road safety, improving road safety and specifically publishing on the County Council website any new measures we are taking. We are proud of this work and we carry it out with county-wide focus rather than a district or borough focus in line with our remit. And we also note the recent changes in Highway Code regarding the order of priority given to road users, starting with walkers, the most vulnerable, etc., and working up. And this motion also provides an opportunity to renew our efforts to lobby the government for more flexibility around active travel funding, giving locally elected councillors who know their areas best more freedom to invest this money in the way their residents would like. Frankly, Chairman, I think there have been a few examples of active travel schemes carried out in line with the current prescriptive requirements from central government that have not been greeted with open arms by local people. This proves that the man or woman in Whitehall does not always know best, even if their intentions are sincere. So we would like more freedom, for example, to invest this funding in improving the condition of our highways to make walking, wheeling and cycling an even easier and more attractive travel option. Unlike the first motion today, at least with this motion we can lobby the government for more control over matters that do fall within our remit to deliver. We are simply seeking more flexibility to make best use of that funding. As I mentioned earlier in relation to the Highway Code, it is incumbent upon all types of road users to conduct themselves carefully and to maintain both their own safety and the safety of other road users, no matter where they stand within the hierarchy of road users and what vehicle they may be travelling in, even if it's just the soles of their footwear, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I hope that members will approve this amendment and I move that this amendment is accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I now call on Councillor Barnfather to second the motion.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Formally second the motion and reserve the right to speak.
Councillor Gowland, do you accept the amendment? Thank you very much. The debate is now open then. Members who wish to speak. Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. Broadly welcome this motion. Thank you for bringing it to us, even though it's been amended. I think it's probably made it a bit more oomph in the amended motion. However, in the last section of this council wills, it's a shame that we, at the same time as lobbying for more flexibility around funding, one of the biggest problems for active travel, because don't forget, wheels aren't just bikes. Wheels can be wheelchairs, wheels can be mobility scooters. Well, that's right. And I think we should be actually lobbying for more powers for our wardens to be able to find people who park right across the pavement. And so I would argue that we should do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Girling.
I'd try to be struggling getting up. There you go. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, as a keen cyclist that cycles a lot normally, in fact, I did 250 miles for charity last year, which raised over £30,000. So I'm a keen cyclist, and I think we've got to be really careful about this, because it's not just about cycle paths. They're not the answer to it, and that's it. We're just loads of psychopaths. Often, there's a cyclist going along, it's the junctions that create the most concern and anxiety, particularly when you're going along a main road and there's lots of side streets coming onto that main road. You get cars pulling up to the give way sign or stop sign and not sometimes, and you also get cars coming in from the other side of the road to go down that road. So I think we really need to seriously look at how our junctions are designed in any developments going forward, but also look at how we might change the road markings on the roads that we already have. And I'd welcome that. I do caution a little bit about the parking, saying that they can't park on the pavement. So I represent Hortonville in Newark, and we inadvertently the street warden put in a thing to stop all residents parking on the pavement. When they parked on the road, you couldn't get a car down it, you couldn't get a bus down it, and you most certainly could not get a fire engine or an ambulance down it. So it has to be done in a way that's suitable for the areas that we all live in. And I can assure you, because I've never had such a well-attended public meeting from that particular area when I called a public meeting about it, and they were very, very angry about it. So we've got to do it in a sensible way, I think. And I think, we've got examples of where Councillor Clark said, where we've got good intention down in Westminster, maybe in terms of creating a safe space for cyclists and wheelies and walkers and things. But because we don't know the area, we've got examples of psychopaths being put in, where the actual use of that is going to be so minimal, it's unbelievable. And we're spending a lot of money, millions of pounds, on putting these psychopaths in. So I think if we've got the flexibility here to be able to look at our own patches in our own area to determine how they're done, I think that'll be a lot better. So I fully and wholeheartedly support this motion. And Penny, thank you for bringing it to us. I am actually a keen cyclist. It's got good suspension and well pumped up tyres. So I'm more than happy if you think you're a keen cyclist and keep up with me. I'm more than happy to go out with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Girling. Now call upon Councillor Wilmot.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I fully support this motion and with the amendment. Although it's not just as in the amendment, it's not just pedal cyclists that are in danger of injury. Motor vehicles are just as seriously at risk, as travel is unsafe in many areas due to the poor maintenance of our roads and pavements. It is not only cyclists and motorcyclists that are at risk, but also walkers and mobility scooter riders. Don't forget the mobility scooter riders. I hear of real problems of overturning scooter riders on a number of occasions, and they're also at risk with more potholes appearing all the time, and often on roads that have supposedly been repaired. Yes, they've been repaired, but it's a scandal that needs addressing. The potholes reappear. The motion says that 1,875 cyclists have been injured in the last decade. That's also a terrible situation, and condolences go out to all those that have suffered the most. I would like to not like to guess how many other pedestrians and road vehicle users have been injured due to road deficiencies. It must run into thousands and thousands, absolutely. Now I will be doing my regular walks or walkabouts over the next few days in my area, as I do, and I shall be walking every road and every street in my area. It'll probably take me about 3 days, but it's to assess the conditions of all the roads, etc. Because I'm probably wrong in being as strong as that. I don't know, but I do feel that it's essential that every road gets assessed and is reported if there's any deficiencies. I think it's absolutely essential, and that's what I do, and I'll carry on doing it because I enjoy walking as well. And can I say that? I will be reporting back shortly on this issue. No doubt about that. Some months ago, it was reported a new system was to be introduced. We all heard from our eminent portfolio holder that the new system was going to be. I'm still waiting for the new improvement program to work. It'd be nice, and I want it to work. I don't want to be awful about the situation. I just want it to work because it's putting lives at risk if it doesn't work. If we've got potholes all over. As I came today, I went down a street with my friend as associate here, and it was atrocious. It was just like driving a cattle truck down. The amount of potholes was terrible. Anyway, so I support this motion before us in the county council today to acknowledge that more needs to be done to make active travel participants feel safe. We all want that. I'm sure we all want that, don't we? Surely. And as I say, that includes all road users, including pedestrians, cyclists, motor vehicles, and as I said, don't forget the scooter riders and the mobility scooter riders. All of us need to be to get good road using. Use the roads correctly and have them repaired on a regular basis. As far as identifying the most dangerous areas for pedal cyclists in Nottinghamshire, that will be a mammoth task. Absolutely mammoth. But I do support it, yes. But I'm not holding my breath for a solution. And so, Chairman, thanks for the people who put this forward. Sensible decision, and I hope people can support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be brief. Cast your mind back to 2007. This council had a proposal to actually build a new visitor centre up at Sherwood Forest. It was beaten by Sustrans, which was a cyclist action group, for £50 million in December 2007. None of that money has been spent in this county. None of it. Sustrans do have access to government ears, and probably we need to tap into their funding. Recently, watching the Tour d'Italia on the cycle paths, there is not one pothole. We've got the Cycling for Britain coming into this county in September, I would imagine. Well, it's coming to this county, and we must be prepared to actually prepare those roads for those cyclists to actually access our county. If we're going to promote the county, we must make sure that those cyclists are safe, let alone cyclists that use our roads on a daily basis. Junctions, cars passing by, there's not enough room. They don't give a room, even though the highway code says that you must give way to a cyclist, having been the victim of a road traffic accident some time ago by a vehicle. I know what it's like to be underneath the wheels of a bus. Seriously, it isn't funny, and it lasts a long, long time. 1,800 people in what do we say? Been injured by motor vehicle in Nottinghamshire. Is that 12 months? Is that 10 years? Is that 5 years? We don't know. But we must prepare our roads for cyclists. If you want them to be safe, junctions safe, make sure that the children are aware of how to ride safely on roads. I know there is work being done, but often you see young people riding bicycles without helmets on. In my day, there were no helmets when I got injured, and to detriment, I still suffer from that today. So just be aware that it really is a serious issue. If you're going to do it properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. I now call upon Councillor Roger Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. First time I've risen today, so I congratulate you and the Vice Chairman for reaching the hot seats up there. It's nice back here, actually, because I get given sweets, so I'll tell you. So we look forward to.
They'll all want to sit next to us, Roger.
No, I rise, actually, I support this motion, because to me, it's quite personal at the moment, because I lost a good friend, a fellow farmer and friend, tragically last week in a cycle accident near just outside Bingham, actually. And I think there's an awful lot we need to do for the safety of cyclists on roads. I think it's a little bit down to training as well. I mean, we do run a bike course, the county council going around all the schools. I think we should all encourage young people. We're encouraging people to get out there on the bikes, but we should also encourage people to learn how to cycle safely, which sometimes a lot of people don't quite get that right. I mean, I live in a rural village, so we know an area, so we do get an awful lot of cyclists riding through and around the village and enjoying it, and it's lovely to see the families doing that. It's a shame we do have cycle tracks and roads, but there seems to be a big reluctance for cyclists to want to use them, and somehow we need to encourage them. If they want to be safe, we provide cycle and active travel for them. They need to use them, and there seems to be a lot of reluctance for them to use them for some reason. I do not know why. And if I have any criticism of cyclists, it's the large pelotons that go around in large numbers of 15 or 20, and think that it's a cycle track. That is something I am looking against. Anybody going out to enjoy exercising out with the family, absolutely fantastic. But our roads are not a cycle racetrack, which sometimes some people tend to think so. And I think that is also dangerous. But I am in favour of this motion, actually, Chairman. We need to improve our road junction, what's said, and the road safety for all people, and encourage people to get out there and cycle, keep fit, and enjoy the countryside. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I now call upon Councillor Creamer.
Thank you, Chair. Rise in total support of this, and particularly what Councillor Girling was saying about the dangers of junctions, etc. And to look to the future, because my ward, Errol's ward, was literally bound the city. The estate I live on, some of the houses are actually in the city. That being the case, the new electric bikes are coming into our estate because they're sat nav guided, and it gives them, I don't know, a few hundred yards, half a mile, I really don't know. But those new bikes are actually affecting the county roads, because all along Porchester Road, all off one side is all Gedley, all county. And they started parking on Norman Road and all the rest of it. I've got nothing against them, but we've got no particular infrastructure from where the city did put it in. So where the city stops, that's where their infrastructure stops. That's where you can put the bikes, that's where you can put the electric scooters. So nothing against them at all, but for our future, we actually start to need looking, because it looks like these experiments in the city, and I think in Derby as well, are going to be a success. So we're going to have to address it ourselves in the not too distant future. So while we're looking at improving roads and junctions, I think they have to be taken into consideration as well, particularly because of the speeds they actually do travel at. Those electric bikes are quite fast, and those scooters are frighteningly fast. So totally agree with everything. But when we're looking at the infrastructure for ours, we need to be looking at the infrastructure that we perhaps will have in about 5 to 10 years. if the city stroke Derby everywhere else in the country is successful. Because if we just do it literally for the bites of what we've got now, we'll be behind again. So that's the only thing. Totally support it, but we need to look into the future as well.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Are there any more speakers? I have no more speakers at the moment. Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. First time I've risen today as well, so I'd like to congratulate you both on your new roles and look forward to working with you for the forthcoming year. Yeah, I rise, totally support this motion today and totally back what Roger said, because they go from my village to Roger's village, so we do get a lot of them. I actually live on one of the main streets where they used to do the test route for the Brough Superior, apparently before my time. But yeah, totally in support of this motion, and I might even get out on my bike, because I like the lycra aspect. So I just leave that thought with you, but totally back this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. We've now got Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I support this wholeheartedly, and I think there's a lot of difference between the way that cycle lanes are developed now and how they used to be developed. I've got a cycle lane from my house that stretches all the way to Mansfield, and in Ashfield we are developing, as part of the town's funding bids that we were successful in over the last couple of years, we are developing a full network of cycle paths around Ashfield, and I think it would be helpful if there was stronger communication between the district and boroughs and the county council when they are planning these things. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, I fully support this, and I think it's a great idea, but I do think the difference in the way they are developed today is different to how they were developed in the past. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. So now we will go to Councillor Barnfather, who's reserved his right to speak. Councillor Barnfather.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. In seconding the amendment as proposed by Councillor Clark, and at the risk of being a little contentious, I'd just like to make a few observations. This motion, as amended, serves a purpose in reviewing our existing commitment to making our highways safer for those who wish to walk, wheel or cycle on them. Like the proposer, I think the overall spirit of the original motion is fine, but I've got a couple of minor quibbles with the choice of wording. Firstly, as Councillor Clark has already mentioned, the motion does seem overly preoccupied with cyclists, almost to the exclusion of other road users. We should have equal regard for pedestrians and wheelers too, and I think this amendment puts that balance right. Secondly, I do detect a hint of anti-car sentiment and motorist blaming in the original motion that simply didn't need to be there, and if anything, detracts from its broader and perfectly sensible point. The original motion stating, albeit without quoting any sources, that over the last decade more than 1,875 cyclists have been injured by motor vehicles across Nottinghamshire. Well, Chairman, in my experience, motor vehicles and pedal cycles are inanimate objects that do not injure anyone by themselves. They only become dangerous when human beings get behind the steering wheel or behind the handlebars and drive or ride them carelessly. Intentionally or not, the original motion seemed to imply that motorists were at fault in all the injury accidents it quotes. But in my experience, this is highly unlikely to be true. In some cases, whatever the precise percentage, the error of judgment causing a collision may be made by the cyclist, and the motor vehicle driver may be the innocent party. So let's not paint the motorist as the bad guy each and every time. We've all sat at traffic lights and we've seen pedal cyclists go straight through a red traffic light because the law does not appear to apply to all cyclists. This isn't all cyclists, I'm being specific here. We've all seen cyclists who go up the side of large lorries, mostly that have an emblem emblazoned on the back, please do not go into my blind spot. That lorry then turns and it has no chance whatsoever to be able to see the cyclist. We've all been on country roads and colleagues have already made reference to that, where we have large groups of cyclists who want to have a chat. It's a day out for them and I fully understand that. but they ride at a speed which invariably is less than the speed of a motor vehicle, and that then precipitates some dangerous overtaking manoeuvre by a vehicle that also wants to legitimately use that road. We've all heard the term, we may not like it, like or allowance, and I'm not alluding to Councillor Girling specifically when I mention that. What we might all agree with, however, that in most collisions between a motor vehicle and a cyclist, wheeler or walker, the motor vehicle driver is the least likely to sustain serious injury because they're encased in this large metal frame, complete with airbags and other various protective measures. It makes sense, therefore, that efforts to make walking, wheeling and cycling safer will in some cases involve creating separation between the different types of travel of different motor vehicles, whether that's cycle lanes, footpaths or other specific provisions. But Chairman, that is not all active travel is about. For example, regarding cycling, and Councillor Jackson's already alluded to this, the government is providing funding for every school that wishes to offer bikeability training for their children. Many of our schools do not take up that offer. So we must try and encourage that, recognising that teaching cyclists how to ride safely is every bit as important as teaching motor vehicle users to drive safely. As already pointed out, the aim of Active Travel England is clear: to give people the choice to leave their car at home, in favour of other healthier, more environmentally friendly forms of transport, and to make those alternative forms of transport as safe as possible. We can make that case in a perfectly constructive way without an underlying tone that vilifies motorists, which most of us are. The truth is that some people do need to drive motor vehicles to conduct their daily lives and business, and this council is committed to investing as much as we can afford in making our highways as safe as possible for everyone using them in whatever capacity. It isn't about an us versus them, nor should we ever imply that it is. It should be about investing in travel and transport measures that make life better and most importantly safer for everyone, Chairman. I genuinely think the amendment improves on the motion and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barnfather. Councillor Henshaw has reserved his right to speak. Councillor Henshaw.
Thanks, Chair. Right, Councillor Clark. I agree with a lot that you said. It's good to lobby government, and as we discussed earlier on, let's write letters, let's lobby. Councillor Carr, I agree with you. Councillor Girling, I agree that when you implement one of these schemes, they've got to be done in a sensible way in consultation with people. And I know that the active travel people came to planning, I'm not sure when it was, you might be able to remember, Keith, and spoke to us about the implementation and the way in which they're going to put these new cycle tracks into various areas. So consultation is active. Councillor Wilmot, yeah, motor vehicles and scooters and wheelchairs and people with buggies all need to have a decent pavement. Yeah, don't they? I mean, this is sensible. It's what we should be doing. If you're in a wheelchair and sometimes you struggle to get around, so it should be a main priority for us to make sure that is the case. There's an old song, and being an old soul, Edwin Starr, 24 hours from home. Walk on, keep on walking. You've got to keep on walking. So I agree. We've got to do things in relation to people on bikes, people that are walking, people that are utilising an healthy and an active way to move around. The Councillor Shaw with regard to, I think you mentioned about the place in Edwin Stowe there the other day. All the paths around that are actually accessible parking, accessible paths, and you can move around that part of Edwin Stowe and Sherwood Forest with great ease, and it's a great facility. Perhaps not what we originally wanted, not as big or as forward thinking, but it still is a good thing, a good way. Councillor Jackson, I'm sorry to hear about your loss, but you get a lot of naysayers in relation to talking about people on bicycles. There's a lot of aggression level towards people on bicycles, particularly now with the changes in the Highways Code. and you've got to have a bit of, I won't say sympathy for them, but at the end of the day, they're out, they're biking. Sometimes it's good for motorists just to step back a little bit and chill out. Put Radio 4 on, a bit of music, and just travel along, and it makes a good day. The left, i.e., left in politics, have had a particular history in relation to cycling in the interwar years. The Clarion clubs that were up and running in a lot of the industrial areas around the Peak District before it became a national park in 1945, the first national park that the Labour government after the war brought in. The Clarion clubs were there, people from working class areas, factories in Manchester and Sheffield. They all biked out into the countryside. So we've had a history of supporting people on bikes, which is to our credit. In relation to the motion as amended, I think it's incumbent on us all to support it and offer a way forward in relation to how we can make travel easier and more effective, more healthier. And Councillor Girling said he goes out on his bike regularly. Well, just before election, I went into my garage and I thought I better clear it out. Well, right at the back, I've got 2 mountain bikes. Well, I got it out, dusted it off, pumped tyre up, put it back, and I haven't been on it since. So now I've only done 20,000 steps a day in relation to the campaign. I might get my bike out, but let's hope everybody can support the motion as amended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. I now call upon Councillor Garland for Councillor Garland's right of reply.
Thanks very much. So first of all, I'm not very good at etiquette. So first of all, thank you. Congratulations to both of you on your new roles. And thank you very much to Councillor Jackson for your work of the last year. I'm very sorry about your friend. I was actually going to raise that case as one of the cases I was going to start this talk with. It's tragic that person died last week on one of our roads. There was a reason this was focused on cyclists, because as I said, that's the group that have still not managed to be saved really on our roads, but I'm absolutely happy for this to be broadened out to all acts of transport, and I thank you for doing that, Councillor Clark. Some cycle paths are great. I absolutely love the Castle Marina cycle path. You can whiz along it from one end to the other, right into the city. Now it goes to Canal Street. I don't understand why people don't use it. It's crazy to me. Every cyclist should be on it as far as I'm concerned. But we know that they have some cycle paths, controversially some in my division, that are completely white elephants because of the way that Westminster have dictated that cycle funding should be used. And we know that we can't have cycle. It's just not going to be practical to put the cycle paths in places where people are actually stuck at those dangerous junctions, which need to be sorted out with an alternative approach where we give some priority to people who aren't in cars. I really am grateful for you introducing a new word. I think I'm introducing a new word to the dictionary, wheeling, which is a really great word because it picks up the whole group of people who use our roads and indeed increasingly the cycle routes who are not on bikes. So not just people on scooters, but also people on mobility scooters who often use the cycle routes. And we need to make sure the roads and pavements are suitable for them. So somebody mentioned the problem of parking on pavements. Parking on pavements is a big deal, particularly in my area. Parking on pavements is essential in some areas, particularly in my area. You know, if we didn't have parking on pavements, people wouldn't get through. In many parts of the country, there's a simple solution to this where the pavements are marked with white line. And I would suggest that maybe we should think about this, where we indicate what is acceptable parking on pavements and what is unacceptable. This is not an anti-car motion. The word driver wasn't actually used. You introduced it. It actually says motor vehicles, which of course can be either way. So cyclists are injured by motor vehicles, not by car drivers. I drive. And I would absolutely agree that we need training for cyclists across the board to make sure people are, and all wheelers across the board to make sure people are aware of how to use roads and paths safely. But on the whole, we know that quite a lot of car drivers could do with a bit of training as well. So I'm really grateful for the cross-party support on this motion, and I'm grateful for the amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gowland. So we're going to put this to the vote. So we're going to put this to the vote. All those in favour? appears to be. Okay. Is there any against? Just no. I think she's left hand up. So that's it. That's unanimous. Thank you. So that appears to be the end of the business. Thank you everyone for attending today, and to those viewing online. This meeting is now closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.